Hey, Pat. I think you're on mute, Pat.
I said, hi, how are you?
I am good. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
Pat, just want to let you know, I have Drew texting me that he can't get in. He's in the waiting room.
I have admitted everyone that's showing here.
I'll suggest he try again.
Yeah, there's no one waiting.
Apparently, nobody else can get in. Other commissioners are trying to get in and not having success.
I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I don't have a single other person sitting in the waiting room right now. I'm looking right at it, so.
I will send them all
Oh,
the
here
link.
comes Guillermo and Dr. Reese.
Okay.
I think some folks are having a tough time getting in. Like the link didn't go through.
There we go. I know a number of people are still having issues getting in, Pat.
So as I see it, we have Drew, we have Guillermo, we have Dr. Reese, Father Jonathan, and Carrie Witherell. Is that correct?
Yes. I know Jacqueline texted me and she said her and Randy the link's not working. I forwarded them the link that I was using, so hopefully they'll be here in a moment and we can get started.
Do you want to get started? You want to give them a couple minutes?
Let's give them like two minutes.
Okay.
Just
I don't know, can someone mute themselves too? Because I can hear a lot of background noise if you're not muted.
We're not going to say we're jinxed just because I have to run everything, right? Like everything is fine. Pat's on my side tonight. She's going to help me get through it in case I don't know
Oh,
what's
yeah.
going on.
No problem with that.
I feel okay, but we'll see how it goes. All right.
That's Rob.
Yep.
Well, we have a quorum, so why don't we begin?
Sure.
It's 6:04.
Sounds good.
Everyone, it's 6:04 p.m. My name is Patricia LaFleur. I'm the Executive Director of Human Rights and Accessibility for the City of Worcester. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Human Rights Commission. We're at a somewhat different date this month because next week, which was our normal meeting day, is a national holiday, and the city was closed, and therefore we weren't able to use that date for a meeting. So we opted to meet today. We are meeting virtually. As a result, all roll call voting will be taken for any motions or any voting taken. You are being recorded. This is part of the open meeting law. If you do not agree with that, you should get off the meeting because you will be recorded whether you like it or not. And I will turn it over to the clerk, Drew Schneblin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Commissioner Drew Schneblin. I'm the clerk of the Human Rights Commission, and I'm in charge currently because I am the only person right now in a leadership capacity. So I'm going to call us to order and ask for a roll call, Pat.
So again, I'm going to take a roll call. The members present. I'd like to acknowledge the former chairperson, Ellen Schemitz, and former vice chair, Liz O'Callahan. They're present on the call, and I appreciate them joining us. Roll call of the members present. Clerk Drew Schneblin.
Present. Aye.
Member Robert Bellata.
Aye.
Member Guillermo Creamer Jr.
Here.
Member Randy Feldman.
Here.
Excuse me. Member Bernard Reese.
Present.
Member Father Jonathan Slavinskis.
Present.
And member Carrie Witterell. I'd like to also welcome the two last names called, Father Jonathan and Carrie. They're the new members recently appointed by the city manager to the Human Rights Commission. And I will turn it over to Drew.
Thank you, Pat. We're going to begin our meeting, as we always do, with the reading of the mission and key terms. Commissioner Creamer has agreed to provide this to us. Guillermo?
Drew,
Sure.
this is Randy.
Yeah.
Jacqueline is here, and no, Pat, you didn't ask Jacqueline if she's present. She's present.
Hi. Oh, you're muted.
I didn't see Jacqueline's name come up in the listing, so.
Yeah, I
member-
had trouble logging on, but I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Member Jacqueline Gang is present. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to start. The Human Rights Commission was established to promote the city's human rights policy. It is a policy of the city to assure that every individual shall have equal access to and benefit from all public services, to protect every individual in the enjoyment and exercise of civil rights, and to encourage and bring about mutual understanding and respect among all individuals of the city. It is the goal of the HRC to ensure that all city residents are treated fairly and equally by eliminating bigotry, discrimination, intolerance, and prejudice. Our work requires us to address institutional racism so that as a community, we can achieve racial equity. Our work also requires us to make visible the unheard, unearned, and unquestioned privilege enjoyed by some members of our community to the detriment of others. We take time to make this acknowledgement, to educate, so the path can be cleared for healing. Some of the key terms that we'll use: institutional racism is the term institutional racism refers specifically to the ways in which institutional policies create different outcomes for different racial groups. The institutional policy may never mention any racial groups, but their effort is to create advantages for whites and oppress and disadvantage for people from groups classified as POC. Racial equity. The term racial equity is the active state in which race does not determine one's livelihood or success. It is achieved through proactive work to address root cause of inequities to improve outcomes of all individuals. That is, through the elimination or shifting of policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages that reinforce the different outcomes by race or fail to eliminate them. And lastly, privilege. The term privilege describes the unearned social power and informal institution of society to all members of a dominant group. For example, white privilege and male privilege. Privilege is usually invisible to those who have it because we are trained not to see it, but nevertheless, it puts them at an advantage against those who do not have it.
Thank you, Commissioner Creamer. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Bellata to read the land acknowledgement for us as well.
Sure. Next, we will continue our practice of acknowledging the traditional ancestral territory of the first people of Massachusetts, on which land we are convening tonight. The Nipmuc Nation is what is now Worcester County. While the Nipmuc history predates written history, records from the 1600s inform us that the original inhabitants of Worcester dwelled principally in 3 locations: Packagug, Tetesset, and Wigwam Hill. It is important to make this acknowledgement and to honor the ancestors that have come before us. Unfortunately, it's also easy to live in this land without ever hearing the traditional names and history of the people who first resided and prospered in these lands and continue to reside and prosper.
All right, thank you. And in terms of any members of the public who may want to speak up during the meeting, our practice is to allow for public participation toward the end of each section of the agenda. So if you'd like to be heard on a matter that we are discussing, please let us know by raising your hand electronically, and we will try to keep an eye on that, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak. And with that, let's move on to commission business. Item 2 on our agenda. Our CEO of DEI, Kevin Levancy, wanted to take a moment to make a brief statement to the commission. Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hi, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment just to do some housekeeping items for myself to the commission. One, I want to recognize Ellen and Liz, who are on the call. I didn't get the chance to formally do this, but I do want to recognize their service. I know I had the opportunity of connecting with them, whether it was through our agenda meeting or one-on-one meeting. It's been a pleasure for working with both, and I hope that both of you still find ways to participate and find ways to continue to advocate through different avenues. But I just want to say thank you, just because the leadership that you two carried helped the commission move forward on that. So I want to take the time to recognize that. 2, as Pat already touched on, I do want to welcome the new commissioners, Commissioner Dr. Kerry Witterwell and also Commissioner Father Jonathan Solinskis. I had the opportunity to sit on their interviews. I was really impressed. From my perspective as the Chief Equity Officer, I am very big on critical thinking and diverse thoughts, something I was seeing as elements through their interviews. I will give them the opportunity to kind of maybe say a word or two, but I can tell you from both commissioners, well-versed in mental health, but also boots on the ground within the community and serving marginalized groups and providing them resources. And I thought that would have been great addition to this commission. I don't know if Dr. Witterwell wants to say something or Father Solinskis as well.
Sure. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'd love the opportunity to introduce myself, my background a little bit, and again, just thank everybody for welcoming me here tonight. So again, I'm Dr. Kerry Witherell. I am an adjustment counselor and a school adjustment counselor at Assabet Valley Regional Technical High School, where I run a program for students who are returning to school after a long-term absence, which is usually a mental health related absence. So I help get them back integrated into the school, help them to catch up on what they've missed while they've been out, and just give them an extra layer of social emotional support as they return to help with their long-term outcomes. I'm also just finishing up my PhD in urban education leadership and policy at UMass Boston. Graduation is next week, and my dissertation research focused on the engagement of social justice, the engagement of school-based mental health counselors in social justice within the public school system in Massachusetts. So what are their experiences like, and what are some of those systemic factors that are influencing their experiences? So I've been a resident of the city of Worcester for almost 4 years now. I've lived the rest of my time in Millbury, just over the border. So as I'm finishing up my doctoral studies, really looking to get more integrated into the community here, and see how I can use my skills, my knowledge to help the residents of Worcester and help further human rights and equity here. So I know there's been a lot that's happened over the last month. I know some of these things have been very difficult. So I am grateful for you welcoming here, and I hope I can be helpful in moving the commission forward. So again, it's nice to meet everyone, and I look forward to starting this work.
Thank you, Dr. Witterwell. Father Salinskis.
Yeah, certainly an honor to be with you all this evening and to be part of this great commission. I'm born and raised in Worcester, lifelong resident, except when I had to go away for 6 years to study in seminary down in Maryland. And thank God I'm back here in Massachusetts, and it's a great place to be. I did 2 years in Southbridge, 2 years in Charlton, and I was very grateful that the bishop assigned me back to Worcester as a pastor here at St. Bernard's on Lincoln Street. And, there's some important issues for myself within my local community, obviously youth-related issues, safety amongst our youth and making sure they get the services that they need, and also, of course, immigration issues. I'm in a very diverse parish. We have a lot of a great, beautiful community here, and a community that lives in a great fear right now, obviously, under the current climate in our country and our nation, and obviously what has hit the streets in here in Worcester. And so it's certainly an honor to be part of this commission, to bring good work forward, to collaborate with you all, and obviously to be a bridge builder. Obviously, no surprise, I'm a chaplain with the fire department and the chaplain with the police department there. And so I look at this as an opportunity to bridge a lot of gaps that might be existing.
Thank you, Father Salinskis. Just some housekeeping items. As we move forward, I wanted to take the opportunity to just remind folks, oftentimes in diversity work, equity work, human rights work, whatever that capacity may be, we might not always agree on the outcomes, having different attentions, we might not always agree. I just want to remind folks at the end of the day, we're still doing this work together, and still to value, how we communicate with each other, how we respect each other, and just being professional within this meeting and also outside of this meeting. So don't let this work paint an image of who someone might be. Right? I want to have that as a reminder. Just want to practice civility and respect. This work is not easy, it's challenging. I'm telling you from my experience, I don't always agree within this work, but I'm still going to have respect for my colleagues, administration, staff liaison. And if there's anything that needs to be raised to my attention in terms of how we engage with each other, I'm always happy to have a meeting and see how we can address that in a respectful way. Second is just communication. When it comes to any logistics around this commission, really rely on your staff liaison, Pat. Pat has a lot of experience when it comes to open meeting laws, but just being a staff liaison for this commission. So if there's something in terms of figuring out, dates or figuring out capacity, figuring out whatever that may be around this commission, that those communications should be through Pat on that. I will always have my door open for any commissioners that want to meet and have one-on-ones. I offer that to the previous chair. So I'm also always going to offer that to anyone on this board as well too. And so that's all of just my updates, and I'm looking forward with our new members, finding a way to continue to address this work and engage in some dialogue with some critical thinking. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
I appreciate that. It looks like you jumped the gun a little bit on welcoming commission members, but that's fine. I will strike that from all of my very specific script that I spent the week writing. No big deal. But we're happy to have them. We're excited to collaborate and welcome. We're very excited to have you here. So let's move right along. We can move on to the approval of the minutes, which is provided to you as attachment A in your packets. Is there a commissioner who would like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Sorry, who was that?
Oh, Jonathan.
Wonderful, thank you, Father. Do we have a motion and a second?
I'll make a second to move motion.
Excellent, thank you, Dr. Reese. Can we get any discussion on the minutes? All right, hearing none. Can we get a roll call, Pat?
Sure. So we have a motion to approve the minutes from the April HRC meeting. The motion made by Father John, seconded by Dr. Reese. A roll call is currently going to happen. Clerk Drew Schneblin.
Aye.
I'm sorry, but was the person supposed to be there to approve the minutes in the meeting?
No,
No?
it's not required. Clerk Drew Schneblin.
Aye.
Member Robert Bellata.
Aye.
Guillermo Creamer Jr.
Aye.
Randy Feldman.
Aye.
Bernard Reese.
Aye.
Father Jonathan Slavinskis.
Aye.
Dr. Carrie Witherell.
Aye.
Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
The motion carries.
All righty, thanks, Pat. Let's move on to the next order of business, and probably one of the bigger ones here. Leadership elections. Now, I know that there has been some pushback as to when these elections should occur, and while I acknowledge that this would not technically be annual, as that would obviously be June, these are obviously extenuating circumstances. Since the city manager has made the decision to remove the chairwoman, Ellen Shemitz, and vice chair Elizabeth O'Callahan from the commission, deciding to fill their seats and continuing to, let's be clear, leave our year-long vacancy empty, and ignoring the requests of both the commission and the members of our city council that they stay in their positions, we're actually currently left right now without a chair and a vice chair. So I'd like to state that it is my personal opinion, I'm just saying it's my personal opinion, that this seems to have been done not for the benefit of our city, but for the benefit of the city manager. Our work is critical, especially now. We need leaders to step up. And I know, Kevin, we've talked about this. We need to move forward smoothly. And in order to do that, we need leadership. So right now we have two current positions for leadership open, chair and vice chair. I'd like to open it up. Do we have nominations for leadership?
Yes, this is Randy. I would like to nominate Guillermo Kramer for the chair and Rob Bellata for the vice chair.
Wonderful. Any other nominations? All right, hearing none. Should we do a roll call on that, Pat?
I'm just going to go on the record, and Kevin, if you're here to support me, this is not appropriate to do tonight. If this is not annual, it would not make that big of a difference to go one more month to have this be more of a plenary session for your voting for the next month. And I want to make sure that I give you my opinion and give you my advice that this is not the right thing to do. Additionally, the clerk position has to be reestablished because you being voted as clerk, Drew, was a temporary measure.
Absolutely.
So all three positions are supposed to be voted on in June, which would be the anniversary of the last batch of elections.
Wonderful. I understand your concerns. I know that you've spoken up about them multiple times. We hear them. We understand. I'm going to really put my foot down and reiterate that these are extenuating circumstances. We have a lot going on in the community, including all the new business that's on the agenda. Things are fraught right now, and I think we need leaders, and we need somebody to be in that position, both of those positions. And I'm happy to also, if we want to do the clerk position as well, I'm happy to do that. Although, just to be clear, I will be stepping down from that position once leadership is put in place in the chair and vice chair. That was, I believe, made clear in the previous meeting, that I only wanted this position if the previous chair and vice chair were going to stay in their positions. I do also need to ask if Guillermo and Rob would like to accept the nominations, I suppose.
Just a quick point of clarification, I guess, Pat, is that your consensus from like the city solicitor, or is this just a personal opinion? I'm trying to understand.
The term annually to attorneys in the legal connotation means 365 days, which is 12 months a year. Annually in the sort of vein that you all have proposed it, if we take it out, I mean, again, I've said this is sort of a perverse view of it, but in your opinion, not you, Guillermo, but in the members' opinion, if in theory you voted in December of 2024, you in theory, based upon your statement that 2024 was a year and 2025 is another year, thus annually, you could vote again in January.
Sure.
So,
And I guess, yeah, and I appreciate that. I think that the, technicality, I think is difficult here, because I would also, argue that I would assume the city manager would fill an open vacant seat as a technicality before replacing two commissioners and having a full commission. So I just think that going tit for tat is probably not going to work here. And if we do the full election now, including the clerk's position, would that make more sense? And so that we're not doing this again in June?
I don't know that this is going to make sense, because obviously if you do this, I am going to get an opinion from the legal department on this. I'm not 100% sure if we reached out on this. If you did, Kevin, please let me know. But it's my opinion that this is not, it is premature and would thus invalidate an election. This is why I've been advocating to stay with June, because you voted last June. That's the only reason. It's not to delay you. It's not to put off the inevitable. It's none of that.
I'm going to support our staff liaison on everything she did say. Right. I think, yeah, on everything that she said in terms of the full year. If it's to wait another meeting, I really don't see any harm in that. I'm committed to, between now and the next meeting, if things need to be transitioned and so we're not losing momentum, I'm committed to doing that. But the guidance has been by the staff liaison that it's a full calendar year.
I understand that. And I understand the concerns. My question to you, Pat, is you have not asked about legal ground on this, correct?
No, we've only had a loose discussion. I referred to my discussion with Jeannie Michelson, who was the one doing the boards and commissions, and typically annually always meant literally 12 months. So
excellent. Well, we can put it up to a vote, but it is my opinion currently that we hold these elections, that we do the nominations, and if you would like to look into invalidating those decisions moving into the next meeting, we can do this again in June. But I think that it is critical to us that we have leadership for the continuation of this meeting and moving forward. And I feel pretty strongly about that. I mean, we can open it up to discussion. Randy, I see you're, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to weigh in. So I would like to vote now. I have no objection to voting now and to affirming the vote in June. But to be quite frank and quite honest about the whole thing, the biggest meeting that we have every year is with the police department. That will happen in June. And there is no way we should go into that meeting without a full board leadership in place. So either we vote tonight to select our leadership, including Drew, you for 2 months, if that works for you. And we affirm it again as the first item of business on June, at the June meeting, so that if that seems official and that's the official start date, that's fine with me. What makes the most sense to me is that the people who know who are going to run the meeting in June know how to run the meeting, are prepared for that meeting in June, and are ready to go, hit the ground running, and organize us for that June 1 meeting. So if we make a vote tonight because I think that I'm going to disagree with Pat and think we can vote tonight. Who cares? But if it makes more sense, we can say we vote our intention tonight and we will affirm it as the first item of business, June 1st. Doesn't offend me to do it that way either. What does offend me is if we don't have leadership in position for the most important meeting of the year. So I would still want to vote tonight, but I could say we have a vote tonight on who will become the leaders as of the June meeting, and affirm it the first thing order of business in June. That'll be fine too.
Thank you.
I just want to echo what Commissioner Feldman said.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. I saw Father Jonathan and then Carrie.
Yeah, obviously being new to the game here, I've watched several meetings in the past there and have an idea of, some of you, I don't know all of you, of course, there. And my only hesitation with the vote tonight would be not knowing you all fully, in terms of just to be able to give a positive affirm on my end there. And
You muted yourself, Father.
sorry about that.
It's okay.
Did you hear anything I said?
Yes, we
We
did.
heard the beginning.
Okay. So my only desire of putting it off would be an opportunity just to get to know those who would desire to be the next leaders a bit better, perhaps on the back end of things there, just have conversations with them there. That would be my only thought there. I would be hesitant to vote tonight only because I'm just new to the game right now.
And
Yeah, absolutely understandable.
point of clarification, as a reminder, you are allowed to abstain. Like, that is something that you are allowed to do as well. And I think that that's something that any commissioner is welcome to do, and abstaining is totally an acceptable thing.
Absolutely.
So that's an option.
I just don't want that seen as a negative for anyone there, so.
You're new.
Yeah.
Like you just said, you're new to the commission, and if you think that that's the right thing to do, that's your call.
Absolutely. A very good point. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, so I did want to echo, I think, both concerns around, again, being new to the commission and being somewhat uninformed to make an opinion on leadership, but also the concerns of being a commission without established leadership. So I think for me, it does bring up the question. I know in this instance, it may be just 1 month, but I think it's important to know, both for this meeting and moving forward, is there a procedure established in place already for vacancies in leadership that happen within the 12 months? So for example, there could have been 6 months left until a vote. So how do vacancies in leadership get filled? What's that?
Oh, I think that was the robot saying somebody left. You're fine.
Oh, okay. So again, I think that's just my curiosity is how, in general, if not for right now, but moving forward, how vacancies in leadership are filled if it's not at that exact 12-month mark.
Right now, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but right now there is no hard and fast rule, and that is a little bit of our issue, is that while it does say annual, there is no specific position in place that moves us forward to, if, like, in the regular government, if the president steps down, immediately that role is filled, correct? Like, we don't just leave the president not having, we don't leave the country without a president.
Correct.
And so, like, in this instance, we don't have something like that put in place. We should, because like many people have stated, we don't want to move into some of our most important meetings of the year without leadership in place. In fact, in my opinion, I don't think we'd want to move forward in any of our meetings without leadership in place. I think it's important for the work we do every single month to make sure that we have people moving us forward and moving us forward smoothly.
Through the chair, if we could just call for a vote,
Yeah.
Commissioner Bellata, you'll have to do your own saying here, but I will accept the nomination from Commissioner Feldman. I'm grateful for everything that everyone here has done. Honestly, I am quite nervous to step into shoes that were very big. And so I think that our former chair did a phenomenal job as chair and really set a high bar. And it's something that I think is going to take a lot of time and energy and I'm hopefully able to serve in the capacity that she was able to. So, Commissioner Feldman, thank you for the nomination, and I accept it.
Thank you. Rob?
Sure, yeah, no, again, I also will accept the nomination. Appreciate it, Commissioner Feldman. Again, same thing goes for our vice chair. We had very big shoes to fill. and I'm looking forward to learning more about the role. But I think, as having served, on the commission, learned a lot, and eager to take that next step and see how we can continue to work, with the city, with the community to move these things forward. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Let's move this along. We've heard both sides. I think we're ready to take a vote. Pat, can we get a roll call here?
Sure, and I'll do them separately, okay?
Excellent. Thank you.
So we have a motion by Randy Feldman. We didn't get it seconded though, right?
I
didn't have-
second the motion.
I'll
Seconded
second
seconded by Dr. Reese, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Nominating Guillermo Creamer Jr. for chair and Robert Bellata for vice chair. I'll take two separate votes for the chair position. Clerk Drew Schneblin,
Yes.
members Robert Bellata,
Yes.
Guillermo Creamer Jr.,
Yes.
Randy Feldman,
Yes.
Bernard Reese,
Yes.
Father Jonathan Slavinskis,
Abstain.
Dr. Carrie Witherall,
Yes.
and Jacqueline Yang.
Yes.
So the ayes or yeses have it for Guillermo Creamer Jr. to be the chair of the HRC. For the vice chair position, Clerk Drew Schneblin,
Yes.
members Robert Bellata,
Yes.
Guillermo Creamer Jr.,
Yes.
Randy Feldman,
Yes.
Bernard Reese,
Yes.
Father Jonathan Slavinskis,
Abstain.
Dr. Carrie Witherall,
Yes.
and Jacqueline Yang.
Yes.
The ayes or yeses have it for Robert Bellata for vice chair.
Wonderful. Thank you. Congratulations, Commissioner or Chair Guillermo Creamer and Vice Chair Rob Bellata. And now I'm going to just turn it over. The show is yours, Guillermo.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Let's move it along. There's lots to discuss. So we're going to move on to, I have the agenda pulled up, to old business.
Oh,
No,
sorry,
no,
Guillermo.
the
Yes.
HRC staggered terms. Oh, yeah, this would be a good point of clarification. Pat, can we get a list from the official city, either whether it's the clerk or the city manager's office, that essentially just states everyone's terms? If I'm not mistaken, our ordinance states that everyone is supposed to be staggered, and I'm concerned that that actually might not be the case.
I
So if we
agree.
could just get clarification on that, that'd be great.
Yes.
Father Jonathan, I see your hand up.
Yes, I was just confused on the clerk position there. So are you staying in? Or are you out for are you going to be on for 2 more months? How does that work?
Right now, I was voted in for the next the previous meeting. I was voted in for 2 months.
Okay. Awesome.
So until then, I will continue to serve, and then I will step down. I will step down after the June meeting.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
And then if June, you want to take that on, please feel free, Father. Okay, so yeah, so Pat, you said you were going to reach out to the city clerk's office and report back on what that looks like.
Yes, I will. It's a
Okay.
question I already had, just because I don't have a list myself to try and figure all of this out.
And I think
moving
it's
forward.
supposed to be posted on the city website, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it is somewhere, but the city website is somewhat of a, like you kind of have to go with your lunch, breakfast, and dinner with you when you go looking for something. So,
Sure.
it's not, I don't think it's easily attainable, but I think it is there, but I'm just not sure where.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, really quickly, it is in the packet under D, under the staggered terms. I think it is listed in there that currently everyone except for myself and now our 2 new commissioners would be able to be replaced at this time next year. So yeah, we need to figure out. we
We need
wouldn't be
to
able
figure
to
out how that happened too, because that
Yeah.
that must be from reappointments or something. I don't know, because I wasn't here.
Father Jonathan, your hand's up again.
I apologize. Wait, I have no idea how that happened, but I did find on the online earlier, when I was just trying to look up everyone's name, that it is online just through a Google search there. And so I just don't, let me just see if I could paste that right into there. I don't know if that makes sense. I just put it in the, do you see that
Thank
in the
you.
chat section? And that's not including the 2 new ones, so it's obviously an antiquated list.
Yeah. So I think, and I think Pat's still getting that information, and then also just any other information that's needed to clarify whether or not it is appropriate for so many commissioners to be expiring at the same time, and how we can fix that. That would be really helpful. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
And
Is
Pat,
your hand still up, Father Jonathan, for a reason, or? I just want to recognize you if you have something.
No. Is it off now?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
off
it's
now.
off.
No
Okay.
worries. Okay.
Also, Pat, sorry. I don't know if this is your job, and this is so silly, but can someone take the quotes away from around my name on the website? Because that is actually my name.
I didn't see that it was like that, but I will let them know in IT. That's very weird.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's the name that it's my middle name, but it's what I go by. But it is, yeah, it's a small but bizarre thing that I'd prefer.
Yes,
to
it
get
is very
changed.
bizarre.
It wasn't just a fun thing I decided to make up one day. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move along. Old business. Updates / open items. Pat, is there anything there from you?
Well, as far as the civil rights complaint forms, I did get word back from the legal department, and what I'm going to do is redraft the form with the changes. The legal department will not approve the form to have either an anonymous complaint or the WPD misconduct included on the complaint. And when I redraft that and send it out, I can give you their rationale with it. But essentially, anonymous complaints can't be investigated, and the WPD misconduct has its own process, which is what we discussed from the beginning and what I, opined about. But I did submit the form the way you all voted on it. The hotline data and process is in progress for all of you. What else do we have?
Can I ask about on the civil rights complaint form?
Sure.
So does that mean next meeting we'll have time to take a look at that form? Or will the police take the entire meeting, or can we take a look at that and hear the rationale next meeting as well?
What I planned on doing was just putting the changes on the form and then sending it out to everyone, just sort of being sort of, expedient, because we're holding on that to develop the process. We were holding on the form to be finalized. So what I'll do is update the form and then send it to everyone to look at before the meeting, if that's okay. Kind of like we did before when we circulated the form. We circulated it prior to, but then had a lengthy discussion about it in the meeting.
That makes sense.
The form was kind of locked in from the last time we discussed it, and that's how I submitted it, how, as I said, you all voted on it.
That makes sense, but I do want to hear the rationales, and I do want to give feedback. So, and I think if we're only talking about the difference being 2 weeks, probably we should take a little time to do that.
Oh, I'm fine with that, Randy. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. We just need to make sure we put some time on the agenda for it.
Okay, sounds good.
Any other commissioners? Any members of the public?
Looks like Ellen has her hand up there.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Commissioner Vice Chair Bellata.
Sorry, I didn't get to it. I just wanted to ask, I saw that, we didn't, or I don't know if we're going to be talking about some new business, the memorandum from the city solicitor regarding agenda. Should we hold that for new business or to the chair?
Pat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that Kevin was going to discuss that with you all.
But I'll hold off then. Thank you.
Okay. Members of the public? I think Ellen is present and wants to say something.
Yes. Thank you, Sir Chair. Just a couple of things by way of old business that I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of, that I know from my former position in terms of posting attachments to the agenda. That was something we discussed at the last meeting, and the idea was that the chief equity officer had indicated he had no objection, but he wanted to make sure with the city solicitor that there was no legal objection to it. When I spoke with him before I left my role, he informed me that he'd spoken to the city manager, and the city manager will not approve posting of attachments to the agenda. So I think you all need to be aware of that and decide whether you want to take any action on that. You also should follow up on the NDA releases. Apparently, there's an update there that you might want to ask for in terms of the civil rights settlement. Similarly, there's an update you might want to ask for in terms of the timeline for receipt of the WPD misconduct records. There was a motion at the last meeting asking that the chief equity officer provide you an updated timeline at this meeting. You may want to follow up on that in terms of old business. He also was going to get back to you about whether or not the interview questions had been accepted and would be integrated. In terms of the civil rights complaint form, best practice does show that there is no objection to anonymous complaints. So if that's the preference of your staff liaison and the preference of the city solicitor, but there's no legal barrier to it, that's something you may want to consider. Same thing with respect to the police. They may have their own process, but at your last meeting, you discussed the fact that it would be critical that people were aware that there was a parallel process and that having that on the form would give them the opportunity to have that discussion. You may want to continue to press on that. With respect to the hotline data and process, you asked for that information and that data over 2 months ago. We were told, you all were told that it would be quickly forthcoming. I've not heard any reason why that hasn't been provided to you. Now, because your June meeting is going to be with the police and likely your July meeting follow-up, that means it'll have been over 4, possibly 5 months until you get it. And with respect to the city council rules, policies, and procedures, you asked the staff liaison follow-up, get you all that information so that you could review the same and determine whether or not there was a violation of human rights policy or the need for any policy or practice changes. That still hasn't been followed up for. As a member of the public, I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that there were outstanding old business items that haven't been addressed. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Big shoes. Big shoes. From the public to the staff liaison and the chief equity officer, any updates on any of those items?
Yes, to the chair, to the commissioner, a few things. So just updates on the NDA release and the settlements, but also the BOPS reports as well too. I can tell you that for the NDA release and the settlements, those will be pushed out first. I still don't have a timeline, and it's not because I didn't ask. Our law department, they do have a system of working through requests. Our request doesn't get to just jump in front of other requests. So I am waiting to see what that timeline looks like, but it is being worked on digitally. In terms of the HRC interview questions, Pat, did we ever receive the interview questions?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Unless I completely missed it, no.
So I have not got the chance to look at the questions. I did inquire about it, and I don't think they've been set in yet. But once they have, I'm happy to implement those and take a look at that.
Am I losing my mind? I thought, Guillermo, you put those up last meeting. Am I missing something?
We talked
thought
about it last meeting.
And they were presented.
Yes, but I don't think they were submitted. They were just only presented.
Well, didn't we vote on them?
No, I think the vote was for me to review them so I can implement them, but they were never submitted.
When they appeared on the minutes of the meeting, I assumed that that was a submission, and I was voting to pass those along to you if to the extent that you found those useful. And you had agreed, Kevin, that, and I think Guillermo agreed, that those are things that should be shared with the potential applicant in advance so that they had time to think about the answers. If that's not submitted, I'm not sure what submitted means.
No, I definitely agreed that there were questions that can be implemented, but submission is too pat. We only discussed it. Discussed some of what we thought about it, and I think it was a quick discussion And I remember verbally saying that I don't have it in front of me, but from sound of first glance, it sounds good. I'll need to sit down with it.
And that was my sort of takeaway too, even from the beginning when we first talked at the prior meeting, when we talked about this, I anticipated getting a separate sort of, we'll call it a memo or document with the questions on it. So if that's a misunderstanding, then I apologize.
Yeah, so just clarifying on what's in the minutes. The motion was by Commissioner Creamer to send above questions as modified and expanded by the question added by the commissioner to the chief equity officer for consideration and adoption. It was seconded by Commissioner Yang and it was unanimous. So
Motion to send to the chief equity officer. There was no submission to me on that.
Okay, so can we have a roll call vote now on a motion to submit what was sent to the chief equity officer last week? Can we just submit that right now?
I'm confused. So
Guillermo, would you be able to just send those over to me separately, even in an email? So they're
Sure,
carved
but
out of everything?
so I thought that that's what you would have done already. I'm so confused. These were sent along.
I didn't get them sent along by themselves like that, no. I mean, yes, they're in the minutes, but I was sort of anticipating, not that it had to be a very formal presentation or anything, but I was expecting to get sort of a separate communication about that.
Okay, I would guess moving forward, if we could actually be more proactive about that, because now we're delayed an entire month. So that's a bit of a problem. So I just want to make sure that
we might not be delayed an entire month if you get those off to me, because, if it's, something that Kevin and I can discuss, we'll discuss it in the office and get back to you all, before the next meeting even. It's not anything we have to hold until the next meeting.
Sorry, just quickly through the chair. We're discussing the questions that are in the minutes, right? Like that specific. So you want us to copy and paste that specific piece that's already in the minutes into a separate new document and then forward that to you? Is that what we need to do?
Well, typically when there was someone working on a separate, like a project, like this was a separate project, that's how it came to me, yes. From that person. For instance, when we were talking about policies, each person who did their part of adopting or making recommendations on a policy would submit a separate thing to me, yes. It's
Sure,
not
but-
anything it's not a big formal request by me or anything, but it's definitely just a misunderstanding between us all. But
So to be clear, you just want that exact same piece that is already there, and you just want that in a separate document sent to you.
it doesn't have to be a document. It can be in a body of an email even.
Why don't you just pull it from the minutes?
Yeah, can we just do that so we don't have to?
Just pull it from the minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
And then in the future, let's just do that.
Pull it from the minutes?
Well, I mean, I don't.
That's not
want
how
us
we've
to-
been operating. So that is
Well-
not how we've been operating
I think
for the
there
last
has been
year.
and I think that there's been many things that we need to work on in terms of how we're operating. But I think that this one seemed like we were just pulling from something that already existed. It's fine. Let's move on.
And I just wanted to add, and it was in the form of a motion. So if it's in the form of a motion and it's part of the minutes, we, on our commission, generally consider that to be submitted. So if you folks don't, please let us know that we should have a different process, because putting a motion forward and providing the information in writing as part of the minutes to us would have seemed like was sufficient. So if you find
Actually,
it not
Randy,
sufficient, let us know.
What's happened in the past, Randy, is I've received the information prior to the meeting. It became part of the agenda. You all discuss it, and then you voted on something by motion. That's how it's happened in the past. So I always had the recommendations or the project or whatever it was separately from the minutes. So if you're suggesting that that's not how it's going to be going forward, that's fine, as long as we all have the same understanding.
So I just assumed because it was in the minutes that it was, I guess you're saying it was submitted to the minutes, but it wasn't submitted to you separately from being in the minutes.
Normally, I would have had it. I was wondering where it was up until the meeting last time, because normally I would have had it prior to the meeting, the recommendations, which is what we've done with everything, every policy that we've chopped up and divided, and every presentation that we've done. I've had it ahead of the meeting as a separate submission. but it's fine if you want to move forward in a different manner.
Okay, understood. So Kevin, I wanted to ask you, I didn't quite get about the timeline on the WPD misconduct records that I asked about, that we had a motion about last meeting. Where are we on that timeline?
Yeah, through the chair to the commissioner. As I had mentioned before, the NDAs and the settlements will be released first. I think the workload for that is a little smaller. They are still working on the full project itself. I don't have a specific timeline, as the law office receives a lot of requests. So they are diligently working through these requests, and they are working on it. I did have a conversation with the city solicitor. They are working on it. I don't want to provide a timeline and then it doesn't meet that expectation. They're getting a lot of requests, but they are working on it.
Okay, and then I guess the other thing too is, I would like, so can staff liaison clarify why the city manager refuses to allow us to put the attachments on the city website? Like, I'm confused by that. Like, why is this change? And we're talking about practices and how they've changed, but this is again a new adoption. I'm unclear why the city manager wouldn't want us to do that.
I'll let Kevin answer that.
It's staying in line with the practice with the other boards and commissions. Outside of city council, the rest of them do practice just the regular agenda and everything goes in the minutes. He had publicly stated that he's fine with that, as well too at a city council meeting, that anything goes within the minutes. It's making sure that we're just staying consistent with the practice of the rest of our boards and commission, and that's been the ruling on that.
I have a question, just because I was reading the memorandum from the city solicitor, and you can go right now to any the planning board, all of these boards. There's ways that you can view documents that are attached, not literally attached to the agenda, but there's still ways that you can view documents that are pertaining to items on the agenda for all these boards. So I just don't quite understand that, because there are ways to view documents that are for different boards for the city. And I just think it would really be.
Did we lose Commissioner Bellata?
I think we did.
Okay. All right. Until he gets back. I see. Oh, Commissioner Bellata, you're going in and out.
You hear me? Sorry.
You're back now. Yes.
Okay, I'm back. I apologize. No, again, I just think it is really a detriment to the spirit of community openness and community engagement to not have attachments along with the agenda items, so folks can have a better understanding of what we're going to be talking about and have a better opportunity to engage. Because I know that's something that the city manager and Kevin and Pat, that we're all on the same page on. So I was just hoping that I just, again, don't understand why, and I think it's really again a detriment. So that's all.
Yeah, I guess, in my perspective, I don't understand why. It just feels like we're kind of yearning for the assistance that we used to have, and so I'm not understanding why. I think for me, I really object to the fact that the city manager wouldn't want to do this. We're just making it easier for the general public, and so I don't understand. Commissioner Sheblin?
Yeah, it looks like in the chat, one of the public mentioned that the Parks Commission voted last month to include their attachments on the agenda. Maybe we can look at the video of their meeting, how they went about that, and what they're doing moving forward. Because then, Pat, I think that would be clear, right? That there then is precedent for us to be able to do that if another board is already doing that. I feel like that would make sense, correct? Then it
Another
stops
board-
being like us being the only people trying to do it, and then it becomes a thing that is happening on the other commissions, and we should be doing it.
If another board or commission is doing that, I'm always happy to go back to the city manager. But in terms of where our current stance is, that stays. But if another board and commission is doing that and we're looking into that, I'm always happy to bring that back up and reconsider. But as of right now, that is the stance.
Commissioner Feldman?
if we're not going to get those records anytime soon about the misconduct records, I would like to add another question to the police officers for next month. The question that I would like to add would be, could you please list the total number of complaints, starting with or exclusively by the most 5 complained about officers without their names on it? But over the course of people's careers, I would like to know of the top of the number of complaints that have been made over the top 5 officers, so we can get some idea about a pattern of complaints against certain officers, if not by name, that's fine, but total. Like, for instance, I'm very curious if one officer has 30 complaints and another officer has 50 complaints, and another officer has 5 complaints, and another officer has 4 and 3. If that's what the top 5 looks like, I would like to know what's being done about the officers that have 50 or 30 complaints. And if we can't get the misconduct records so that we get some feeling for what's going on in the police department, then I would at least like to know, do some officers have a very large number of complaints far in excess of other officers, so that we can ask, so what happened to that officer? So that we can learn from for the public what's going on. So if we're not going to get those records, and it doesn't sound to me like we're going to get those records definitively anytime soon, I would like to ask that question to the police department. And the only thing I'm wondering about for discussion is the top 5 enough? Is the top 10 enough? Are we okay without asking for names? Or what do other commissioners think about that kind of inquiry, and how should we structure it?
A lot of that is public record too, I think. So,
So
okay.
I think it's public record, if I can. I think it's public record, if I got this right, only when it's sustained, then the
Right.
Post, so then the Post publishes it. But if the complaints are not sustained, we have no idea, other than if you read a few press accounts by the alternative press, about what are the numbers of complaints against those officers who are most complained about, and how would that compare against your average police officer? And that would be in the course of somebody's career, so we could see, so what happened to this person? Because, Post doesn't show that this person had their badge taken away or was suspended, except on a very few cases where you can see some people are suspended. I just want to know, what are the patterns that we should be learning about for the public?
Okay. Any other commissioners, because there are members of the public that like to speak? Okay. Elizabeth O'Callahan.
Hi, thank you so much. I know there's a lot to talk about tonight and wanted to circle back to a couple things from earlier. First, thank you for the kind words, and congrats to new leadership and welcome to new commissioners. There's a lot of work happening on the commission, and we're happy to have you working with. Happy to see the work continuing. I wanted to highlight two things related to things we were discussing earlier. One thing I forgot to mention last month was that in the past, you guys have asked me to do a number of things during meetings, commission meetings, in terms of recalling old information. And the way I've been able to do that is by compiling a bunch of public records together into searchable PDF documents. They are all public records, so I'm happy to share them with any commissioners who need that. You guys are likely to need that going into the June meeting, because that is frequently a place where someone will say, oh, didn't we talk about this in 2019 or something? Can someone find that really quickly? So anyone who needs it, I'm happy to share that with you. And the second piece was just around that we have welcomed 2 new commissioners, but there's still, what's been raised is that there's a vacancy still. It's been open for well over a year now, and I wanted to publicly voice my concern that choosing to leave a vacancy open while removing sitting members of the commission, regardless of who's being moved or removed, is really an existential threat to the commission's ability to function. I'm really concerned about issues that we've had in the past around being able to have quorum and being able to have a full panel of voices to be able to do this work. There's a lot of work before us, and that work can't happen without a full and engaged commission. If that is the wording of the ordinance, like if they're allowed to do that, if the city manager is allowed to do that in terms of the wording of the ordinance, it really, really needs to be addressed. This body may be the body to move that work forward. I philosophically very strongly disagree that that decision was within the spirit of the ordinance. And this is not about the people who were removed. This also happened last year, and we have been functioning with functionally 8 people for about a year and a half now. I really, really hope that that can change, and that if there's some kind of loophole in the wording of the ordinance, that will be closed, and that a third member will be appointed very soon, so that you guys can function with a full commission and not risk, meetings being canceled due to quorum. Just so you guys know, there's about 1 meeting a year that is canceled due to lack of quorum. That happened when we tried to do our race equity audit review back in April of last year, which is why we didn't have elections. So again, it keeps all of the other work from happening. So I really wanted to urge everyone here to give that some thought and think about what actions can be taken moving forward. Because if you can't have a full commission, you can't have meetings, none of the other work can happen after that. So anyway, I'm here if anybody has any questions, but thank you everybody again for all you're doing.
Thank you. David Webb?
Yes, hello. This is just on the first part of the agenda, the commission business.
We're on old business.
Okay, so this is including the HRC interview questions, civil rights complaints, hotline data?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I guess first and foremost, it is of course disappointing, and I'm sad to hear that we do not have a timeline on, it sounds like, any of the things this commission has requested. It feels like the law department does not answer this board or the chief equity officer either. So I guess I shouldn't feel so bad about them completely dismissing and ignoring so many different public records requests and other questions. The fact that they have a system of working through the requests and that this commission doesn't get to quote unquote jump in front says that the fact that they are not responding to so many different people and so many different bodies might be part of that system and a function of that system, especially if it is being worked on digitally. So I would ask that they consider redesigning their system to be in the interest of transparency and public cooperation instead of protecting the ability to act without integrity on the behalf of our administration. It does seem like this body last time reviewed, submitted, and did everything they could before implementing. So I'm not sure at what stage things are supposed to be reviewed by the staff liaison officer, but it sounds like these questions weren't used, and an apology for misunderstanding does not undo the damage for responsibilities that were not upheld by the clerk for a process that was supposed to already happen. So on the same note, in regards to the lack of transparency, in regards to attaching items to the agenda, the Worcester Parks Commission recently voted to start including everything. So I'm not sure why the manager's permission is needed for this body to do the same thing. And I'm also extremely concerned that he seems to be limiting this body more than others. It seems like human rights is something that he would want to allow for prioritization. It seems like that was just something he would want to accept. So especially since it seems like the clerk has stated that she's historically had everything in a separate document each time previously to the meetings, I don't really know why there's no reason that these items could not be included to the public. And I find it extremely concerning that even at this stage of government, we have so many different issues preventing us from getting an answer and transparency from the law department. Like, with all due respect to everyone here, what is the point of this body with how effective it is able to be? And so I'm glad, well, I'm not glad we're going through leadership changes. I feel like they are a symptom of a larger problem within the city, but I'm glad that that we are already beginning to discuss these problems under the new leadership, and hope that we honor the things that our prior leadership tried to do. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I heard some discussion about officer records. Every officer has what's called an officer information card. It lists all the allegations against them that have been investigated and the disposition of those investigations. You know, as is our awful state public records law, you need to know either, you know, if you're looking for a BOPS report, if you want to have a good laugh, those you'd have to ask for the specific incident and the specific officer involved, or have some specific data, and you'd have to ask for the information cards by specific officer. So with 480 some officers, having any insight into, you know, a percentage of time, you know, basically a conviction rate, like the number of the percentage of time that BOPS finds people responsible for what their allegations are, or anything, any macro statistical analysis is essentially impossible unless the records were released, and that is very clearly not going to happen, because because we want to get to this report about a civilian review board so it can be voted down, and then hopefully all this goes away, seems to be the plan. But you can get those, and you can request those as you'll get them much faster requesting them as a public record by yourself than this board will be provided them, quite obviously. But you can request them, but it has to be by individual officer. The only thing that's redacted is the complainant, unless the complaint has led to a lawsuit and that's public, and then the complainant's name wouldn't be redacted. Otherwise, the complainant's name is redacted, but the officer's name and what the allegations are all there by individual officer.
So let me see, Tom, if I can ask you a question.
Sure.
Let's say I have an officer in mind, or a few, and I wanted to say how many complaints have been issued against this particular officer.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, I guess I'm learning from you, that I would get a response and I'm going to be able to learn that information?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then where would I send that request to? And how long would it take to respond?
Just do Worcester Public Records. If you Google Worcester Public Records, it'll take you right to the page. There's a portal on the website. You can make a request there. They have 10 days with a 15-day extension, 10 business days with a 15-day business day extension to get that to you. So you'll get it much quicker that way.
Okay, and if I did that, is it public to that officer who made that request for that public record on that officer's conduct?
I don't think by policy, no. I mean, could they find out? I'm sure.
All right, so how's that different? Like, not by policy, but how could they find out? I'm sure. In other words,
so they could actually, it is, so the text of your request actually becomes a public record. So if somebody requested, for example, all public records requests related to me or something, you know, to that person or something like that, you know, they could find out that way.
Because they could find who is the person that made the request.
Yeah, they'd actually get a copy of the request if they made such a request like that.
They being the officer, not the Department of Public
I could do it. I
Records.
could say, give me, you know, officer, give me every public records request about officer XYZ. And if you had made a request, it would be in there.
Okay. And again, I still don't have clarity on they. In meaning, if I use my name and I asked about XYZ officer,
Yes.
would XYZ officer know that Randy Feldman made a request about XYZ's officers' numbers of complaints since being on the Worcester Police Department, or would they not share that information with XYZ officer?
I mean, that's an internal question. I do not believe that they would be notifying anybody about anybody else's public records requests, but they could file their own request and find out. Because again, the text of your request then becomes a public record.
I see. All
All
right. Thank you.
I'm going to move us along. And then I see Ellen has her hand up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that all the commissioners, including the new commissioners, knew that the police department has been wonderful about responding to the precise questions that the Human Rights Commission poses to it annually. And in the past, we have asked for, and they have provided, a list of those officers, and you could say the top 5, top 10, top 20, with the most complaints in order of frequency, when those complaints have occurred, the nature of complaint and the resolution of the complaint, and the discipline imposed or not imposed as a result. So in terms of Commissioner Feldman's request for a motion, is that was something he wanted to put forward. And if there were a second to it, that could be added to the questions. And in the past, that is information that's been received promptly. And the police department's been very helpful in putting that forward. There's no need to go through a public records request when this commission has the right to that information and has a relationship with the police department that is ensured access to that information. Thank you for taking my comment.
Okay. All right. Any other commissioners?
So I
Yes,
just
we-
don't, I just do want to ask that as a motion. I'm putting that forward as a motion, as former chair Shemitz mentioned. I would move that we would ask for a list of the complaints made against individual officers without their names over the last over the course of their service as officers for the top 5, or let me say top 10 officers, so that we can get some idea of if there's a pattern of some officers having an inordinate amount of complaints made against them as compared to other officers in the top 10 list.
Sorry, Randy, is there a reason you want them without names? I would prefer, if we're doing that, that we would have names.
Okay, so we can, if you want to do names, we can do names. And I'll tell you why I'm not excited about doing names in the beginning. Because I'm not looking to finger or humiliate a particularly named person right now. I'm trying to learn information about patterns so that we would know later, do we really have a problem where we have no choice but to ask for something by name? Because this officer or these 2 or 3 officers are so out of line with everything else that the public could be in danger by this person. Because the defense could be, well, if you're in the gang unit, you're going to get more of those kind of complaints. Or if you're in the vice unit, you're going to get more of those kind of complaints, right? So I would like to first learn more before fingering somebody publicly with the stigma of us putting their name out there that way. But, reasonable minds can disagree on this one, but that's my own view.
That's
Hey,
my only concern. My only concern there is just like the amount of time, especially if we're trying to get this information maybe before the June meeting.
You need to have it redacted.
Yeah, let's not try to do, we already have enough problems trying to get multiple information over multiple months. Maybe we just get the thing we need now and use it, with what you're saying in mind, taking into account that maybe the information there needs to be examined and looked at with a harder eye, not just to say the most complaints means the worst police officer or whatever, but let's not try to do too many things over too long of a period of time. I think we already have too much on our plate as it is. That's my opinion. Go ahead.
Father Jonathan.
Yeah, Randy, I just want to, I don't know, correct me if you're wrong, you had made the comment, you're not looking to want to humiliate someone right now. Is the intent to humiliate later?
Okay, thank you. That's very astute.
I disagree with that whole, mindset.
Yeah.
To look.
Very astute, very astute. I was trying to be kind by saying finger or humiliate instead of humiliate. I mean publicly held to account. Somebody who will take it as humiliation. But I certainly don't mean that the motivation is to humiliate somebody. But it certainly will feel like that to that person and their family and their loved ones. So that's why I don't want to call someone to public account unless it seems there is no choice but to do that for the sake of the community, in spite of the fact that somebody will feel a certain degree of humiliation when that occurs. So, but thank you for correcting and
a point of clarification there, Randy. I'm assuming you mean finger point, correct? That is, you're talking about the expression. Got it. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Dr. Carey.
Hi, I wanted to propose either a change in wording to your motion or maybe the addition of a second data set. I think you were asking for total number of complaints over the course of a career. And I wanted to propose over a time frame. So for example, kind of, I think, looking at frequency rather than total number, because I'm concerned perhaps, just to throw out a fake number, let's say somebody had 10 complaints over 30 years. That's, concerning as it is, but if someone has only been around 2 years and already has racked up that same number of complaints, that's a closer frequency, and I think also a concern. So I think perhaps either maybe top over career, but I'm also curious whether that's last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, who are the top officers in that time frame as well.
Yeah, that's very valid. That's very valid. It's I think that might exacerbate the problem a little, but that's a problem of data. If somebody's in the vice squad over the last 5 years, or in the
Motion
gang unit
to
over the last
add
5
additional
years.
question to the listing of questions for the Worcester Police Department.
Ellen, you're unmuted. Thank you.
I am so sorry.
That's okay. Technology gets the best of us. And for folks that do have their hands raised, if you could just lower your hands when you're done, that allows me to be able to identify folks better. So thank you so much. Go ahead, Randy. Continue. Sorry.
No, that's all. I can't say I know the solution to this problem. I'm not really sure, right? Both problems are true. What Kerry, if I could call you Kerry, if you don't mind, what you identified is completely true, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's long career, you can say, well, they have this many in 30 years. This person in 5 years has almost as many. You can't compare the two. You're 100% right, right? But the problem with if we did it as a proportion or a frequency, then you have the problem of, well, what unit are you in? And I just don't think it's fair to ask for people's names, in these two instances, since we have a data collection problem, even though we're trying to get to the problem of somebody's malfeasance as a police officer. They are human and they deserve respect, except when the public is in danger because of their actions, and we feel we have no choice but to say something about that. But I don't want to go there. So I don't exactly know how to bridge the two different ways that have been suggested.
Okay. So I would like us to call Ellen. Is your hand up because you have something to say, or you just have kept it up? Okay. So I do need a point of clarification, just from the staff liaison as a follow-up. Father Jonathan did a really good job in expressing the fact that he was going to be a bridge, which I wholeheartedly appreciate. I do think we need just clarification from the city solicitor's office as to whether or not Father Jonathan has to recuse himself when it comes to any matters pertaining to the Worcester Police Department. I know that he's in a voluntary position, but he's still listed on official information from them. So in the same way that any other commission or council would, I would just like that clarification from the city solicitor's office. I'll let Father Jonathan decide what he'd like to do today, but I think that clarification from the solicitor's office would be very helpful.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm certainly fine with abstaining. I mean, that's okay.
No, and that's your choice. It's more so I just want clarification, because if anything, seeing you as that bridge, I think is totally appropriate. I just want to make sure that we're following the correct, the correct rules here when it comes to needing to recuse ourselves in the same way a city councilor has to recuse themselves if they work for the Worcester Public Schools, vice versa, things like that. So I just want to make sure that we get that clarification. So I appreciate your willingness to understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a motion on the floor, and if I'm not mistaken, there was a motion to amend, or there was a friendly amendment. Is that correct, Dr. Carey? Or did you want to?
Yeah, I would
do a
actually like to
separate
add it as
motion?
an addition. I would like to collect the data that Commissioner Feldman is requesting, but then also I think if we could also request perhaps top numbers in last 5 years, perhaps.
Sure.
Is a
Okay.
reasonable
So a
time
friendly
frame
amendment
was,
then.
yes.
Okay, Commissioner Feldman, is a friendly amendment accepted?
Yeah, it is. It is. That absolutely. Or what about this? I wanted to see Commissioner Witterell. Is that correct? If I'm going to be formal, if I don't want to say Carrie.
It's Witherell. It's as if there's an H after the T, but I'm not offended by mispronunciations.
Okay. All right. So if you can call me Randy and I could call you Carrie, that would
Absolutely.
be easier. All right. Very good. All right. So, all right. Now we could do it the way you and I spoke about. I'm sorry this is taking so much time. We could say over the course of an officer's career, we could say in the last 5 years. We can do that. Or we could settle at the last 15 years. Do you have a preference on that?
I would defer to you. I think you have more experience on this matter, so I think whichever data you think is going to be most helpful, I would trust your decision making on that.
All right. Could we hear from Tom Marino? He has more experience than I do, and I think he would like to speak.
Tom, if you could keep your comments to a certain degree, that'd be great. Tom?
You have to hit the unmute button. I'm sorry, Gamma. What did you say? What was the request?
I just said if you could just keep your comments brief, that'd be great. We're gonna move to vote soon. So go ahead.
So over the years, I have 50 some of these information cards. I haven't looked at all the trends, but I would say that in my overview, I'd say that these things tend to bunch together. That officers seem to accumulate a few, 3 over 3 years, and then may go a few years before you see another one. I have no explanation for why that is. So I would just suggest that looking at these things at the most macro level, so you can get kind of the, per year, or, one every 2 years, one every 3 years, or whatever it might be. I think the rate that they're accumulated at on average is probably the best way to look at this, because there's no if you do the last 5 years, I don't know that really tells you anything, just because it's not like people are officers are accumulating these at like clockwork, right? They happen sporadically.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move to vote. So it's Randy's motion with a friendly amendment by Dr. Carey. Pat, I'll call for a roll call.
Real quick.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Just thinking about it out loud now with the whole police situation. I serve an immigrant community. Am I not allowed to vote on anything in regards to immigration?
No, so that's where. No, because Commissioner Feldman is an immigration attorney. So I think it's more so just because you're listed as. That's why I just want a clarification.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. Like, okay.
No, because you serve the immigrant community, but I think if we were talking about the Catholic Church, that would be like, you would have to like. I mean, we're not going to talk about the Catholic Church here, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's more so because of your official role.
Communities, that. If we're talking about the LGBTQ community, would someone who identifies that way have to remove themselves from that conversation?
So it's a point of clarification that's needed by the solicitor. It's in the same vein where, for example, if we're looking at city council, Councilor Ojeda cannot vote for anything when it comes to Worcester Public Schools because he's an employee of Worcester Public Schools. I know that if I'm not mistaken, you're not a paid employee by the Worcester Police Department, but you are, I think, deemed there's a certain status, and that's why having the solicitor's clarification is how I think that it would be best for all of us to certainly understand. That's my perspective on this. I
think the key is to understand what the role of a chaplain is, and I think I could certainly send that out too. That way there, everyone
sure. But again, it's the solicitor who I think will provide the proper context here. So, and I hear you and I respect it. It's more so just a point of clarification. Commissioner Schneblin?
Yeah, I don't want you to feel like we're ganging up on you.
Yeah.
It's because I had to look this up when I joined, or when I was looking at joining boards. It's the appearance of sorry, I wrote it down for myself a long time ago. Appearance of conflict, which means like you don't want the public to assume that just because you work with the police that you have a bias towards the police. And I think that's going to probably, and Pat's going to take care of all of this, but it's probably going to be a case-by-case basis that you will mostly have to look at every time and decide. And that just is to keep you from open meeting law problems and that kind of stuff. We're trying to make sure that you don't
Yeah.
get in trouble because we don't want you. There's a
I'll
lot
get
of open
myself
meeting
in
law.
trouble. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. I can do that on my own.
Yeah, wonderful. I just wanted to
appreciate
make
that.
sure because I work for book publishing and I couldn't join the library board because it was an appearance of conflict. So
Yeah.
it was something that I also had to look at. So just so we want to make sure that you feel welcomed and
Yeah.
part of the commission.
Yeah, and that's why I made sure to highlight the fact that you talked about how you want it to be a bridge, which I think is totally appropriate. It's more so just like I want the official clarification. And like I said, I will totally, like, you have every right to vote if you want to for this. Once we have the clarification from the solicitor, that's how I think you should consider handling it moving forward. For now, I'll let you decide how you want to handle tonight. I think that's your right. You have, but I think that once we do get that clarification from the solicitor, it would be great if you take that into consideration as well. So whatever they may say, because they may say, no, it's totally fine. It's a volunteer position. And I think it would be totally appropriate to then clarify what your position actually is. So that way the public also understands that you are a bridge builder and not here to just, to have a biased insight. So, but you bring an insight that I think is important in the same way where, some of us may in certain things. So, okay, I'm going to move us forward. Pat, can you do a roll call, please?
I need to get a second, and I just need clarification on the friendly amendment. Are we staying with the 5 years?
Can we
No,
just
it
repeat
sounded
the
like
question?
15 years made more sense.
Can we repeat the motion? I'm not very clear.
That's going to
This
repeat.
one.
So the motion was by Randy. He was looking for the top officers from the WPD with complaints, without names, with details of said complaints amended by Commissioner Witherell, and her change was to cover the period of the last 15 years.
And I'll second that, Pat.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I wanted to say the total number of complaints against officers, and then Commissioner Witherell added, and also broken down by the last 15 years.
Very good.
Wait, we're requesting this, or is this a question that we're posing to WPD when they come next month?
The question.
I mean, you all
Are
are
we
going to vote on it.
requesting records? What is this motion?
No, it's to WPD. This is one of
To
the
add to the
questions.
questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the motion before us, we're going to do a roll call vote. Drew Schneblin, clerk.
Aye.
Member Robert Bellata, I'm sorry, Chair Guillermo Creamer Jr.,
Aye.
Vice Chair Robert Bellata,
Abstained.
Member Randy Feldman,
Aye.
Member Bernard Reese,
Aye.
Member Father Jonathan Slavinskis,
Abstain.
Member Dr. Carrie Witherell,
Aye.
Member Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
And so the motion carries.
And then if I could just add one other thing for Father Slavinskis, thank you. Like what everyone's saying about your contribution, not whether you vote or not, can't vote or shouldn't vote, any of that. But the contribution is invaluable. For instance, what you brought to my attention, invaluable. So thank you so much for all that.
Great. Okay. Let us move along. I'm going to move us on to new business. So the first one being the human rights implication of ICE and WPD policy and practices. It is no surprise to any of us that we will be discussing the incidents that occurred on Eureka Street. And I think that as a commission that handles human rights for the city of Worcester, the biggest question that I think is being asked by the general public is, were any human rights violations occurred on Eureka Street? And so I think that it has completely traumatized our community in the way that many of us are seeing. There are folks that have fears of what's happening, and this happened in our own backyard. We received national attention, international attention for something that is quite painful and is traumatic. I think that I want to stress that because I think that that's getting lost in certain in certain conversations. The events that happened a couple of weeks ago were quite traumatic for our community. And so I think that as a commission, we have a right to discuss this. We also have a right to hear whether or not some folks believe that human rights violations occurred. And that's kind of how we move us forward. I'm going to open this up to commissioners to speak first.
If I can, Commissioner.
Vice Chair Bellata.
Thank you, Chairman Guillermo. Yeah, it absolutely was something that was traumatic for the community, and it's definitely, these things are happening across the country. It's a scary time right now, and I think it's important for the Human Rights Commission to continue to work with the city administration, with the WPD to find out, how to improve better policies, better training. I think that's really key. And again, what some city councilors have said, it's so there's time to be frank and have some ask some tough questions, but also ask tough questions in the spirit of how can we be better? How can we better improve policing in our community, and make no mistake, the police are part of this community. And I think it's important that everyone realize that. They want to, but it was very hard to see. It was a tough situation. It was really hard to see a young 16-year-old girl get pinned to the ground while her mother was being taken away in an unmarked car, going to we don't know where. These are some really frightening times, and it's important that just as a community we work together to figure out how can we be better, because I think at the federal level, make no mistake, these things are being done to sow fear and division, and I think it's important as a community we stand up and say that's not going to happen here. How can we be better? But we need to ask some questions and really take a look at co-response models. That's something that we've talked about a lot on the commission, and I think that's this WPD had that policy, had the pilot program, if I'm not mistaken. So again, I just think it's really about asking questions, but really working together, and that's all I'm going to say. But it was obviously a very traumatic experience for the community, and not an easy situation.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Schneidlin?
Yeah. I definitely want to reiterate what Commissioner Bellata said. I think hopefully, and unfortunately, I hope everybody watched the body cam footage that was released by the city. It's very hard to watch. I know I had to take multiple breaks. It's incredibly upsetting. I think that, one of the things that we're tasked to do is to help inform and create policy. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity here for us to look at what happened. Obviously, like one of the biggest conversations was the WPD assisting ICE. It's been, the question that's unfortunately been posed nationally at this point to our community. I think, I know that assisting ICE in that respect means detaining somebody. By our WPD would have to detain somebody. So I do think that there might be some opportunity for us to look at what assisting means for our police department. Maybe that needs to be expanded. I do want to say that the things that were released by the city manager on Friday don't seem to have addressed the issue. I will say it feels like all of those things that came out on Friday that were sent, I sent them as attachments earlier today, or maybe yesterday. I don't think any of those would have changed the outcome of what happened on Eureka Street. And I think that that's an issue. I think that those are the kind of things we need to be looking at. I also, I want to discuss the possibility of listening sessions with the community. I know that happened with the body cam issue a couple of years ago. I wasn't around, and I don't know exactly how it all went. Maybe one of the previous commissioners who were here can speak more about that, but I do think that our community right now doesn't feel like they're being heard. I think that's very clear, and I think that we are in a unique position to give them an opportunity to be heard, and I think that that's very important. I don't want to take up a lot of time. I know this is a big issue, and I know a lot of people have things to say, so I'm going to just
Yeah, so
Like
I was
most other
actually
people.
I was actually chair during the police body camera sessions. And the sessions were impactful for those that attended, but they were not well attended. And I think that that's a mix, right? Maybe the climate wasn't right. Maybe folks weren't receiving information in the way that they should. We know that city communications on outreach, it can be difficult sometimes. So I'm curious to explore that. That's interesting. Commissioner Felton?
Okay, so I've been an immigration lawyer here in Worcester, but in general, for 35 years. Uh, I, without exaggeration, had to sit and read for about 30 to 40 hours uh, to to understand what's going on in this new environment, including what happened in Worcester, what people's rights were, what's ICE's rights, what are the police department's rights. When we give Know Your Rights presentations, we concentrated so much on the difference between a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant, and what happened on Eureka Street. That was not the major issue. And all the human rights things that we gave didn't handle the major issue that people thought it was. And in fact, we're a touch misinformed because we, as an immigrant knowledgeable community, hadn't done enough to inform the community what's going on and who has what rights and what one could reasonably do in situations such as what happened on Eureka Street. So what I propose is that just as we have concentrated rightfully on the police and on homelessness over the last 2 years that I've been on the board, I think we have to concentrate on immigration in these next 6 months very, very much. And what I would like to see us do is to have a large part of our meetings where we bring in different people, including immigration lawyers in the nonprofit sector, private immigration lawyers, people who, the city solicitor, to explain why the city's policies came out over the last few days the way they did. Perhaps the police chief, perhaps an ICE representative, perhaps to do this on our own. If we do it on our own, I think we should not limit ourselves to the English language. We have to have times and sessions that would be dedicated totally to the Spanish language and to the Portuguese language, for instance. And I think that we could even have some synergy with working with some of the committees of the Worcester City Council, who also work on issues of public health or public safety. And maybe we can have some joint meetings with them. But this is very big and people don't know what to do. And me, 35 years doing this, I had to do incredible research to figure out how this plays out. So I think we owe the community, as a human right, a lot more knowledge and education and a complete concentration on these things, meeting after meeting for a certain period of time, in collaboration and with guests coming to speak and in different languages, so that we can inform the public on who has what right, because it is not simple, it is complicated.
So so going off of what Commissioner Feldman just said, and I'll get to you, Dr. Carey, in 1 second, and then Commissioner Bellata. One of the things that I saw when reviewing the footage was the lack of use of the language policy that was worked on here and essentially worked on with PD. I did not see that happen. And so I think what I would like to know is I'd like to know, is the language policy that we worked on with WPD and we had back and forth with, that they, I think, if I'm not mistaken, adopted, is that not used in extraordinary circumstances like the one that we saw on Eureka Street? Because my understanding is that the individual that was arrested did not speak English, and I thought that that was the purpose of what the HRC did. It was to put forward this language policy And I don't know if that was actually practiced. So I don't know if this is a motion. I don't know if this is a question to add for our meeting in June, but I just want some clarification from the police department as to when is the language policy used, and is it not used in circumstances like that, given that I would think that that is probably one of the most critical times to use it. Dr. Carey?
Thank you. I'd just like to echo, what those before me have said. I agree wholeheartedly, and just wanted to add just my own thoughts. I think, both in the Eureka Street incident and statewide, nationwide, we're seeing from federal agents the failure to identify themselves in who they are, proof of who they are, proof of authority to detain people, as well as violence and intimidation used to detain people, and a lack of due process afterwards. Randy, as you stated, it's a very complicated and murky legal territory. But I think the guidance that came out in the attachments from the city manager talk a lot about what can't be done by police, what can't be done by city employees. But I do think we owe it to the community. I agree with your idea about listening sessions. And I think we need to figure out how we can serve the public. What can we do, not just what can't we do? I want to know how we can help residents to feel safe and supported. How can they be approached in a respectful way? If they are approached by agents, how can we verify that people are who they say they are, and what's going on? How can we help people to be better informed about their rights, which again is a very complicated matter. I took note, in the beginning of the meeting, you open with talking about the purpose of this committee to ensure equal access to public services. And it does seem as though in the public is where people are most at risk right now. And so I think we owe it to the community to focus on this. I think it's an important issue right now. And again, I think we have to see what can we do versus just what can't we do to help address this.
My mic was off. Sorry, everyone. Really quickly, and kind of just listening to all of you. One of the things that I think I'd like to kind of move forward with for us as a commission is a policy recommendation for WPD as to whether or not the police department can, one, identify that the individuals that are there are indeed federal agents, and two, if a lawful warrant / arrest is actually occurring. I think those are the two questions that I really think are sticking out in the community. Is this a way in which our police department can assist the public, in the sense that this is entirely legal, like we have to let it play out? And I think that's where everything went awry, in my opinion, as someone who understands mixed status families and stuff like that. And so I think that's something that I would like to see as a policy recommendation that our commission moves forward with. I don't know if anyone wants it. I don't know if we want to continue the conversation before voting on something like that, but I know that I got Commissioner Bellata, and then I have Father Jonathan. So I'm going to go in that order.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted you think, again, to what Commissioner Feldman said about community listening sessions or thing like that, it would be important to get some legal opinions on where to have it. And I worry that people are probably scared to be out in public now. I mean, these urban communities in Worcester are very scared, and across the country, everyone's very scared, and they think it's something that Father Salinas maybe talk to you about roles that churches can play legally. You know what I mean? Allowing people to gather. I don't know, but it's really scary that this is the conversations that we're having to have right now. And I really think, taking a look, or having WPD also really taking a look at trying to fast track some policies on co-response models. I just think this really highlights the need for that. And I think it's something that would be very beneficial, and think it's worth having some type of motion about that, but just we'll leave it at that.
Father Jonathan, sorry, keep going on mute.
Yeah, obviously, I was away last week, took a quick little vacation there, and this is when it all sort of blew up there. And it was completely disturbing to see everything that was taking place, of course. In the days following the presidential election, I invited Congressman Jim McGovern, the mayor, D2 City Councilor Candy Carlson, to the church to speak directly to my Spanish-speaking population. I have a very immigrant population. I have a population that is extremely, extremely scared. I already have one father that was taken away and stopped by ICE a few weeks ago there. I have a mother now, with her 3 children, and trying to figure out where he even is at this point there. And so I completely get it. And it breaks my heart every time I look at the people and I saw the lack of people in the church because of the fear of wanting to go outside and being stopped, but they stood there, and they gave their word, of course, that they were going to be with them, that they're seeing, they're supported, they're going to protect them as best they possibly can, and I want that echoed out through all areas of the city of Worcester. They need to know, our people need to know that they are indeed protected and supported, and they're seen and not forgotten, right? And so it's very scary to see what is indeed taking place, and I'm having conversations within our parish community that I never thought I would have to be having. I never thought I'd be becoming a priest to talk about how are we gonna assist immigrant children when parents are taken away. And these are conversations we're having now with other family members, with other community members within the parish there to say, okay, would you be willing to take in this child if mom and dad are taken away? So there's a great fear that is being lived out within our community. We certainly have a lot of work to do. And so I thank you, Randy, for the way in which, Commissioner Randy, you talked about the next few months. We need to bring immigration forward. We really do. But my fear is it just can't be about policing. Yes, let's look at police issues if there are issues involved with that with WPD. I mean, from that perspective, I'll say yes, it was a very hectic, crazy situation. And I wouldn't know what I would do if I had walked into that situation. Hopefully try to de-escalate it as best we possibly can. And hopefully that would be the goal of anyone, elected or not, to de-escalate a situation and not great attention to that there. But with that, Commissioner Randy, I think we have to look at ways in which we, as a Human Rights Commission, could really begin to support the immigrant community more and more, especially the undocumented there. And so perhaps it is indeed the listening sessions. Obviously, like you said, Rob, there the churches have a great role to play, no matter what faith. We look at the Brazilian-speaking community, the Portuguese-speaking community, the Brazilians there that are here. How are we engaging with them in their moment of fear? Not just the Spanish-speaking ones there or whatnot. So I think we have a great opportunity to come together as a Human Rights Commission, but also as a city, again, to continually echo support and love to people in their time of need.
Yeah. Commissioner Schneblin, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate a point that I made earlier. Is I do think that, as Randy mentioned, there was a lot of misunderstanding about the way that all of this went down from a legal perspective. If you've watched the body cam footage, there was a lot of like, there's no warrant. We've since learned that obviously they don't need a judicial warrant if they're out in public, which is unfortunate and not okay, honestly, in my opinion, but that's the way it happened. There's a lot of like misunderstandings there. But I do think that one of the big issues here is that we really need to have some very clear clarification from the WPD about what assisting ICE looks like and what that means for our community. We need more policies to understand what that means for them, because I do think that it's very murky and vague from a legal perspective about what they can and can't do. And I think that's a major concern for our communities right now, that they don't feel like they're safe calling the police after what happened. I think that one of the big issues there, if you've watched the body cam footage, is there's actually a point where one of the officers mutes his body cam. You can see it on the video. There's also multiple times when the videos are redacted. The audio is redacted to protect the identity of a minor. I know that in the body cam policy, it does state that in the event of an emergency, the body cam can be muted. I don't see why that policy exists if then they can redact the audio later. And I think that actually puts us in a pretty precarious position of not understanding what was happening in that situation. So I think that maybe we can reevaluate the body cam policy, go over that again, because I do think that that's a pretty important part of the information we were able to get from that situation. And we still, I mean, obviously we're still waiting for hopefully more body cam footage, but I know that I agree with Randy that we need to focus on immigration. I think that's a huge part, and on giving people the information they need about what's happening, both in multiple languages as well. I think that's a huge part of what we need to do moving forward. But I do think that we should walk and chew gum, as it were, with this situation. I think we need to focus on multiple things when it comes to this, and what we do is review and create policy, and I think that that's what we need to be doing here.
So I think, Pat, I think there's a couple of things here that I've gathered that I think we're going to have to vote on. I am going to let members of the public speak after the commissioners are done. I am going to ask them to try and limit what they have to say. I understand that emotions are very heightened over what happened, and so I respect that, and I appreciate your advocacy, but I do want to make sure that we're kind of tying it to what we are doing here on the commission. But before I jump, so Pat, I'm hearing a couple things, and then commissioners, please step in if you think differently. One, I'm hearing a potential motion from Commissioner Feldman about exploring listening sessions as an option for the commission to hold. The second was a policy recommendation from me that essentially asked for WPD for WPD's assistance in clarifying whether or not a legal arrest is occurring by identifying the federal agents and by identifying whether or not a warrant is present. I also heard Commissioner Schneblin talk about reviewing the police body camera policy, and then I think Commissioner Bellotta, you might have had something that you said that should be a vote. I'm not sure. It's lost on me right now.
No, I wanted to do a recommendation about exploring best practices for crisis intervention and like co-response models, and see what WPD is doing to look into that. And just, I think that would be something that would be great for us to suggest.
And that might be a recommendation for an addition to next month's meeting on questions for WPD. That's what I'm thinking. So those are 4 different things that I've heard. I don't know if other commissioners think there's anything else, but I'll let commissioners think on it. I am going to move to the public, and again, I am going to ask members of the public to, please do your best to limit your time and also to stick to what we are talking to as a commission. David Webb.
Wait a minute. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Yang. Yeah, did you have something to add?
Yeah.
We're not hearing you.
You muted Randy, and now we can't hear her.
I want to talk about what Randy discussed about public listening sessions. I think we need to really be careful with this. I think that it's coming from a place of privilege. We want to help and we want to assist, but we don't know what the community wants. I think a lot of people are very scared right now. They're scared to go to work. They're scared to go to church. They're scared to even go to the food bank, and they need food. So I think we need to really be careful when we're making recommendations for a community that we actually are not a part of. So I just wanted to make that clear.
All right. And then I also would like to totally disagree in this respect. I don't want a listening session, to be quite honest about it. It's not that it's not worth listening. It's very worth listening. But from my point of view, it's much more valuable to give information out. That's why I disagree with Councilor Yang, with Committee Member Yang. We need to give information to people who are going to be affected by this because they're immigrants. They're undocumented immigrants. We needed to give it to people who work with immigrants, people from churches, people from social service agencies, people who are employers, people who go to protests. We need to inform everybody about what the laws are, what the opportunities are, what the dangers are in a sliding scale of more to less dangerous, what ICE is doing, what ICE is not doing, when to be scared if you go to court, when not to be scared if you go to court. There's millions of things that have to be conveyed to well-intentioned people, both the people who are suffering and the people who care about the people who are suffering, for everybody to have a more informed idea about what is possible in immigration under this administration, under Donald Trump. So it doesn't matter to me if nobody comes to the session. What I want to do is try to put something, it could be on Zoom, to inform anybody and everybody who cares about these issues, what the actual possibilities, legal debate, legal ramifications are, and the human ramifications are more in a social, spiritual, brotherly, sisterly realm that our commission can always address. But I want to provide more than moral support. I want to provide real information.
Like potentially inviting partners that have these types of resources. So like an information slash listening session is what you're getting at.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Pat, so if you could just adjust that, Pat, when we get to the vote. Commissioner Carey, Dr. Carey.
Yeah, I just wanted to add really quickly, Commissioner Feldman, I think it sounds like you're really highlighting the importance not only of having a listening session and having an opportunity for some in-person discussion, but I think multimodal way of getting information out. So perhaps there are public listening sessions for those who are able and comfortable attending, but then also being very intentional of all the other ways we can get that information out there for people who are not able or comfortable attending something like that.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'm going back to the public here. I'll go with Maria.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So just to kind of piggyback off of what Father Jonathan said, I work with the youth, and so my biggest concern is how the youth are affected and the lack of de-escalation. So sorry, my cat thinks he's part of the meeting too. But so when the police arrived, I didn't see de-escalation. There wasn't a lot of them. There wasn't any of them saying, hey, what's going on? They immediately went to the ICE officers. And I don't believe that every officer was bad. I think that a lot of them had no idea what to do. I think they weren't trained. But I also feel like some of them made the issue worse and escalated. And so as a mental health clinician, I provide in-home services for families in the community. And one of the most important things I do is teach the parents how to self-regulate so that they can in turn regulate their children. And we need the same from our officers. So to give an example, when we watch the body cam footage, we see Officer Vallejo literally jump out of his car and immediately go to ICE. And in no way am I saying that I'm on the side of the ICE officers, but at least when they grabbed the young child, because she's a child, you could hear him saying, stop, stop, you're going to get injured, you're going to get injured, stop. Officer Vallejo immediately took her and was like, you're under arrest. Disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace. And so this was a child who was just locked in a car, doesn't speak the language, saw her mother taken by strangers, so she's traumatized. And the way he handled this situation was to just continually yell at her. And my concern is, and I've heard this from other families, so if they were to call the police to a mental health call, how would he handle that if he arrived? So if nothing else, I think that he definitely needs to work on self-regulation as well as training for de-escalation, because when we got the message from the mayor and the city manager saying they did their job, nobody got hurt, that child was already traumatized and they re-traumatized her and then threw her in jail. And that was a child, period. The way that she reacted to them taking her mother was a normal reaction. It would have been the same if, God forbid, her mother was in the house and the house caught fire and a fireman said, we can't get her out. Her first reaction would have been to run towards that house and try to save her mother. At that point, she wouldn't have been arrested. So the fact that he didn't care about that and then continued to yell at her even after she was on the ground and she was restrained. He still continued to say, "You're under arrest, you're under arrest, you're under arrest," to this child who doesn't even speak the language. That's a concern. And so we're seeing the things that the DOJ report pointed out in real time in front of our faces. And then the people in charge are telling us that they did everything right. And so until, it starts at the top, right? So until they change and they take accountability, nothing else is going to change.
Thank you. I see Tom Marino.
Hi. If I could make a suggestion that in your meeting with the police department next month, that one of the questions might be what de-escalation tactics were used, because I've heard this quite a bit, that didn't seem to be a lot of de-escalation tactics in play. Folks at the police department are really having a hard time understanding that you showed up at the scene and you went to people you don't know and would not listen to anybody that is a resident here, and why that is problematic for some folks. They saw some insignia that looked like law enforcement, and that's who they wanted to talk to and no one else. Also point out that in these videos, I've only see one of these agents displaying any credentials, which is required unless there's been some executive order that's exempted it. Traditionally, they have to at least be displaying a badge, and I think I only see one. This is being mocked by some online, but the idea that people that are in the business of human trafficking couldn't buy some stuff on Amazon, put a gun on their hip, and act like ICE, and this is going to be the response. They'll walk away with anybody they want. Maybe that's, alarmist or whatever, but it's concerning. And just lastly, if Pastor Rizzuti wasn't assaulted, nobody was assaulted there.
Okay. I see an unverified hand. I don't have a name. Could you just identify yourself, please, before you speak?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Ashley.
Hi, Ashley. Go ahead.
All right, great. Thank you. So I just want to do a bounce off of Tom's comment really quick. I'm obviously not going to speak much about the incident that happened on Eureka Street. However, there really was a lack of de-escalation that happened. And I would love to see, the data on this. I don't know how many police officers on the Worcester Police Department are trauma informed, but it did not seem like any of the officers that were responding were trauma informed. And we do know that policing is inherently traumatic for many of the communities in Worcester, just simply based on socioeconomic factors and race and such. I do want to make a suggestion. I agree that maybe listening sessions really aren't the best way to do things. We have organizations, within the limits of Worcester who already serve these communities. And I would think that using them as liaisons to work with those communities would be more beneficial than trying to create new ones. Father Slavinska suggested, supporting these impacted communities. And I just wanted to point out that there are organizations in place that are already doing this. They are established, and they have worked with the communities for a long time. So I think utilizing them would be extremely beneficial. And yeah, so I am a little concerned about, open communication and transparency issues that we're seeing with the Worcester Police in terms of this particular incident. And I want to stress that I think the best way to handle situations like this in the future is to be proactive versus being reactive. I think the ball has really been dropped, and by probably everybody in the country, because I think we're just blindsided by how quickly things have escalated, that we really haven't had the opportunity maybe to discuss this, or maybe we have and it just hasn't been taken. But that is one thing that I just want to, and I think that's what we're doing here right now. So I'm glad that we're here talking about this. Thanks for listening.
Of course. Last member of the public I have here, David Webb.
Yes, hello. I will try to keep it as short as possible. To be clear, this is a continuation of the problematic pattern of practices that the Worcester Police Department has become known for, and the way the city responded demonstrates why it's been going on for so long. In consideration of the purpose of this commission, ensuring equal access to public services and that all city residents are treated fairly and equally, it's worth noting that if our armed masked men can show up and abduct people based on the color of their skin, that's not treating everyone fair or equally. Immigrant rights are important because, among other things, if you can be abducted by armed men simply by not having papers on you, then none of us have rights. The new policy that the city and Worcester Police Department just released is not murky or vague. It says they'll do exactly what they just did, which is obviously problematic. This behavior is not new to me. I have seen the Worcester Police Department behave the same way with constables and repo drivers in unlawful situations where these third parties know that so long as they obtain possession of the property before the local police arrive, the local police will support them in keeping the property in their possession. So this is the same ideology I witnessed last Thursday on the Thursday before last on Eureka Street. If you recognize that the Worcester Police Department treats immigrants as property, and then in that moment the alleged federal agents had possession of the supposed property, then their behavior makes perfect sense, from everything to the muted body cam footage to how they tried to substantiate their behavior retroactively. What this results in is aggressive, violent men exploiting these gray areas of the law against people who cannot afford to assert their rights later in court and know that the local police department will support them. It results in them attacking people, timing their actions when police are about to arrive, which is what happened here. ICE called, they made the scene sound worse than it was, and they pleaded for help, and the Worcester Police Department showed up to help them as they knew they would. At this point, it appears that ICE had called the Worcester Police Department because they needed childcare, but also because they knew that Worcester Police Department could handle the crowd while they got away with their so-called target. Federal agencies used the Worcester Police Department as babysitters and crowd control so they could complete an abduction after assaulting the residents of our city. I've watched many body cam footages, but couldn't actually bring myself to watch these yet because I was there that day and camera footage was even closer to the horrible screams than I was on that day. So I'm not asking you guys what happened. I know what I saw and I'm sharing that perspective. The Worcester Police Department did assist, they did cooperate with ICE, and they did arrest people handed to them by ICE, in this case the minor. It's not a human right, but the fundamental basis of due process is the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And if our police department could do that competently, they would, but instead they laugh in the face of that basis with the president of the police union making statements to the press. So I just want to be clear, yes, human rights were violated both before the Worcester Police Department showed up, when those federal agents denied someone using the restroom or changing their baby's diaper, and then after the after the Worcester Police Department showed up, and more importantly, because the Worcester Police Department showed up. Then our city got gaslit by the city manager, as we have become accustomed to, and it fractured our community even further and demonstrated exactly how incongruent our city administration is. The Worcester Police Department made absolutely no efforts to de-escalate. To the contrary, they made the situation much, much worse and then lied about it. So I want to be clear, it's not just the masks. ICE didn't have their body cams on either. They are acting without accountability, and our police should not want to be part of that, never mind defending this. The city lacks integrity, and this issue is just not getting that discussed at a national level because of this instance. Worcester knows that our cops are bullies. The equity audit told this city that our police is racist. The DOJ report told us that they're rapists. Now ICE showed us they're xenophobes, and the city manager showed us they're liars. As for listening sessions, I think they'd be helpful if the city has ever demonstrated that it actually listens. Information is the best tool against ICE right now because they are preying on people who do not know their rights and depending on local departments not to care and local commissions not to be able to do anything even if they do care. I also want to note that the Public Records Department typically provides footage through the Public Records portal, and this time they're doing it through YouTube, which, in addition to exposing our city's trauma to the rest of the world, and probably depending on the YouTube comments to side with ICE over our constituents, is problematic because it is allowing the Department of Public Records to not actually cite the exemptions as they should in all of these legal processes. Thank you for taking your time and your effort to try and create some level of human rights in Worcester.
Thanks.
Yeah, so if I could just say this, because I am deeply concerned by a lot of things with this whole situation, and I pray that our undocumented immigrant population is not being used as pawns for any political gain whatsoever to attack the police department or try to get votes in any way, shape, or form. And so maybe, at the end of the day, we could put forward and ask for an an external investigation review to be done on this incident completely, because the fact that there were so many people involved in this on Eureka Street out of nowhere, I think speaks volumes. And so I think, maybe we can put forward as a commission seeking that maybe an external review is done on this situation specifically, because my fear is right now that our community, undocumented community, is being used as political pawns.
So can you clarify as to what your motion would be here? Just so Pat has something that she could read off of and we would vote.
So do we have a right to ask the city manager to essentially say, hey, can an external review be done on the department in regards to the situation?
We have a right to ask as to whether or not the city manager wants to respond to it. That is his right. And so we as a commission have a right to put that forward. Yes. So if that's something that you'd like to put forward, Pat can definitely take that down, and then we'll just have a second, and that's kind of how we'll do it. Commissioner Bellata, before I move on to having us vote on things.
Yeah, I just, wanted to kind of push back a little bit about what Father Slitsky said. I think, when we have residents and elected officials, rising to the occasion to say, like, let's be better about this, and that there are, concerns that concerns that the community has after seeing what they saw. And I think really what it comes down to is we all need to be willing, and this includes, WPD leadership, which I know Chief Saucier, is, and we in the Human Rights Commission have a great relationship with WPD, but it also comes down to union leadership too. Like, this is not about political games or whatever. This is about saying, let's have an honest conversation about trying to be better. And I think, not wanting to have those conversations only is just not going to lead to bringing people together and resolving this and trying to be better. So I don't necessarily think wanting to have these conversations or folks, or elected officials saying, like, let's be better, is necessarily, using a population, standing up for a population isn't necessarily using a population for political. So I just wanted to say that. But I think, if we can really work together and really have buy-in from everyone on the police department, we can be better. And I know that's something that WPD and every police officer wants to do. This is what I mean. We're all together on this. And that's just really what what I wanted to say. So thank you.
Commissioner Feldman.
Some people believe that the police department escalated, people who were there and people who saw the video. Some people thought that the immigrant rights advocates escalated, people who were there and people who saw the videos. I don't want right this second to deal with perceptions. I want to deal more with facts. And what I would like to do is ask another question of the Worcester Police Department when they come to see us in June, phrased this way. We understand that the Worcester Police Department in general does not work hand in hand with ICE. However, there are exceptions to that policy when the Worcester Police Department will assist ICE. Could you please tell us what are the exceptions to the general policy that the Worcester Police Department will not assist ICE? The second question I would like to ask the Worcester Police Department is, the Worcester Police must identify themselves. They wear a badge, they wear their name on their uniform. ICE apparently doesn't feel the same obligation to wear their names or otherwise identify themselves on their uniforms or the legal right that they're enacting when they're enacting it, when they're picking somebody up. Could the Worcester Police Department, to the extent it has knowledge of this, explain when it is notified that these are ICE officers, how they are notified they are ICE officers, and what obligations do the ICE officers have to non-Worcester police, but to the public in general to know or to identify themselves as police officers. I would like to learn those facts at the next June meeting.
Okay, so Pat, I would just add that to the list of what Randy kind of put forward. So so there's several things that we need to vote on here, but several things need to get seconded. So what I'm gonna have Pat do is, Pat, if you could just read off like each thing individually, and then if a commissioner has a second, great, then we'll move to a vote, and then we'll keep going in that direction. Does that make sense to everyone here? Yes. Okay, great. Pat, can we start at the top, please?
Sure. So I'm going to start with yours, Guillermo, which was what is the language policy WPD used? Why wasn't it used on Eureka Street? And then included in that was, can you identify what policy was involved and what federal agents used? Are these lawful arrests from Eureka Street?
Sorry for interrupting. So I think that's two separate things, because one is I want a policy recommendation that
Okay.
states that the Worcester Police Department will identify federal agents and will verify that a lawful arrest is being made. I think that
Okay.
that is one policy recommendation.
Gotcha.
And then second is the use of the language line. How is it normally used, and why it seems was it not used in this case? So I took two separate things. One's a policy recommendation, the other one is a question to the PD.
Okay, and then you had Tom Marino made a comment to you about were de-escalation methods used. Did you want to include that on yours too, on the bottom in terms
You can
of?
put that in the bottom one for the questions for PD for next month. Yeah, that's fine. So
Okay.
so the first one I think is the policy recommendation. Is there anyone who will second that?
I'll second.
Great. And so Pat, if you could do a roll call for that.
Who was that, Drew?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion put forward for policy recommendations by the chair, Guillermo Creamer, vice chair, Rob Bellotta.
Aye.
Clerk Drew Schneblin,
Aye.
member, member Randy Feldman,
Aye.
member Bernard Reese,
Aye.
member Father Jonathan Slavinskis.
I just want to be consistent with everything. But this is more regarding ICE, right? So I'm just gonna say aye.
Okay, member Dr. Carrie Witherell,
Aye.
and member Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
All right, that motion.
I didn't vote. Pat.
Chair Guillermo Creamer Jr. Sorry, Guillermo.
Aye, that's okay.
Very good. So the motion carries.
Great. All right. And now the second part to what I had said was the adding the questions to next month for WPD, which Pat had illustrated, one being about the language line, and then also their de-escalation efforts. Can I get a second for that to add those questions?
I can second that.
Great, Dr. Carey, with her first second.
All right, so we have a motion by the chair regarding use of the language line, and was language policy used, and why does it appear that it wasn't used on Eureka Street, seconded by Dr. Carrie Witherell. Chair Guillermo Creamer Jr.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rob Bellotta.
Aye.
Clerk Drew Schneblin.
Aye.
Member Randy Feldman.
Aye.
Bernard Reese.
Aye.
Father Jonathan Slavinskis.
Abstain.
Dr. Carrie Witherell.
Aye.
And Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
So that motion carries also.
Awesome. Okay, so I think the next one was from Commissioner Feldman, information/listening sessions. So exploring this as something that the commission could do in partnership with local resources. Is that doing that well? Pat and I will fine tune it later. Okay, great. Can I get a second for that? Or I guess can I second that?
So I'm sorry, who made that motion, Guillermo?
That was Commissioner Feldman.
Okay, so to explore the informational listening sessions for the HRC, is that what you're referring to?
Yes,
Okay.
in partnership with local organizations. Go ahead, Commissioner Feldman.
Information and listening sessions.
Yeah, there you
Okay. And you're going to second, Guillermo?
Sure. I won't do that again. Sorry, everyone else.
All right, so I'm going to take a roll call on Commissioner Feldman's motion. Chairperson Guillermo Creamer Jr.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rob Bellata.
Aye.
Clerk Drew Schneblin.
Aye.
Member Randy Feldman.
Aye.
Member Bernard Reese.
Aye.
Member Father Jonathan Slavinskis.
Aye.
Member Dr. Carrie Witherell.
Aye.
Member Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
So that is unanimous.
Great. And then the next one was questions for PD, right? It was.
The other one I show is Rob made a statement about asking the WPD regarding co-response models and their recommendations or response. Have they done any research on it, et cetera?
Yeah, so we would be adding that to next month's questions. Is that right, Commissioner Bellata? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Does anyone want to second that?
I can second that.
I heard Jackie first. So Commissioner Yang will second it.
Okay, so we have a roll call on the recommendation to add questions by Vice Chair Rob Bellata. Chairperson Guillermo Creamer Jr.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rob Bellata.
Aye.
Clerk Drew Schneblin.
Aye.
Member Randy Feldman.
Aye.
Member Bernard Reese.
Aye.
Member Father Jonathan Slavinskis.
Aye.
Member Dr. Carrie Witherell.
Aye.
Member Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Thank you.
Great. And then I think the final one is from Father Jonathan. It was to request the city manager consider an external investigation on the matters that happened on Eureka Street. Do you want to, is that correct, Father Jonathan, or?
I mean, there seems to be a lot of, confusion around the incident and a lot of concern around it and a lot of questions regarding it. And so maybe if there was an external review, bringing outside eyes in to look at the situation, we'd be able to have a greater sense of clarity to see if practices were actually put into place and not just perception.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I don't think it's going to hurt, right, to ask that question.
Okay. Any commissioner would like to second that?
I'll second that.
Jackie?
Yeah, that was Commissioner Yang.
So we have a motion made by Father John regarding requesting the city manager and begin or entertain the external review of the Eureka Street incident, seconded by Commissioner Yang. We'll do a roll call. Chairperson Guillermo Creamer Jr.
Aye.
Vice Chair Robert Bellata.
Aye.
Clerk Drew Schneblin.
Aye.
Member Randy Feldman.
Aye.
Member Bernard Reese.
Aye.
Member Father Jonathan Slavinskis.
Aye.
Member Dr. Carrie Witherell.
Aye.
Member Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
So that also carries unanimously.
Great. Okay. I can't tell if the members of the public are raising their hands again or they just haven't lowered them. But they can, if you could quickly touch on what you're going to speak, I do want us to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I will absolutely touch on what I had my hand raised for. I posted the question in the chat. Just requesting clarification because the verbiage that Commissioner Father Jonathan used when asking for an external investigation had some confusing language in it. So I was hoping to clarify the objective of the investigation
I think that Father Jonathan tried to clarify that, but so normally what we'll do is we'll kind of fine tune the question internally, and because so what the commission just voted on was to move forward with the recommendation that the city manager consider or entertain an external investigation on what happened on Eureka Street. I don't know if any other commissioner wants to say
Yeah,
anything
I
else to
think I
that.
can say that I don't know if I like that verbiage, like consider or entertain. Like if we're passing a motion for him to investigate what happened, then let's say that instead of saying entertain.
Okay, and Pat and I can fine tune that, like, right, Pat?
Yes, and don't forget that we had with the prior chair and co-chair, and I wouldn't think it would be any differently here. We had the sort of scrivener's sort of exemption where if we were fine tuning language, that didn't have to come back as long as it was in with the sort of core reasoning or motivation behind the motions made.
Yeah, so Pat, Rob, and I, and potentially the clerk would all meet and discuss the matters that we voted on tonight and just fine tune that with the hopes of really representing what the commission at large seeks. So.
Really quickly,
Yep.
to the chair. I just maybe the public and I guess myself, maybe I should have brought this up before we voted, but do we need clarification as to, like, maybe this is to Father Jonathan, who would you like this review to be by, and do we want like a time frame? I guess it's probably a little more analogous than we
Yes, I guess at the end of the day, I would be asking for an outsiders to come in to look at it. You know, so
Does
not
that,
just.
would you like, I mean, like, does that mean like a civilian review board? Does that mean something from us? Does that mean like an investigation by somebody outside of the police department that is like internal affairs? I guess maybe that's what we need is clarification on. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but that might be something.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would envision outside investigation looking in. You know, it's that what I'm trying to say. Sorry, my mind is all fried up right now.
If I could just add a friendly thing, and maybe considering a law office do the external investigation, so that way, like that's something the city manager should consider is
Yeah.
an independent law firm, probably. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I see David Webb first and then Maria. Again, I am going to ask you to limit it to what we're talking about. We still have some stuff to go through. So go ahead, David.
Thank you. I'll keep it very quick. I also was put off by the way it was phrased. It sounded as if Father Jonathan might have been asking how there were so many activists there and not why there were 35 officers there, or about the officers' response or lack of de-escalation. So I definitely would like, especially if it's going to be phrased based on the intent of the person who put it forward, that we have some clarity onto what this investigation is actually investigating. Thank you.
Sure. Maria?
And, you know, I was just going to say that I appreciate, you know, you all taking the time and what you're doing. But every time that there's some sort of investigation, the city then says that the investigation is wrong. So, you know, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I think the issue is that we already have lost faith in the people who run the city. And so having another investigation, I mean, I think that is great, right? But then if they find that Officer Vallejo needs de-escalation training, but the city manager and the mayor and everyone says, you know what, that's wrong, it was done by interns, or you know, they didn't know what they were doing or whatever, it's going to be a lot of time wasted, and we're really looking for accountability. So I don't know, I know you can't force that on somebody, but an investigation is great, but then what? Right? Because when we get the findings, it's in front of us and we're told that that's not really what happened.
Okay. And then I have Ellen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out that under the city ordinance, the Human Rights Commission has the authority to hold a hearing. You could indeed hold a hearing, call in the officers who are present, call in city officials. You have subpoena authority, and you could ask the hard questions about what specifically were the de-escalation techniques employed. what were the particular policies that you believe governed your actions here? And you can also ask specific questions about how particular actions that they discuss do or do not comply with the clear and express wording of the Human Rights Ordinance. So you all have that authority. The public is wanting answers and is wanting sunlight to be shed on this. If you ask for an outside investigation by a law firm, that's great, but the timing is unclear. You all could convene hearings post haste and really provide the kind of accountability, sunshine, and information that a lot of the public has been requesting. Thank you for taking my comment.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna think about that, Ellen, because that's something that we should probably consider and look into. But let me move us on to the WPD policies and practices, specialized units, K9 guidelines. That was next on our agenda. Any commissioners want to jump in on that? I see Randy's trying to unmute himself.
Thanks. I'll tell you what I wanted to talk about, but I was going to wait to the end, but maybe now's a good time. I like in-person meetings, or at least the option of in-person attendance. So I don't want to go to everything being on Teams or electronic, unless I'm the only person that cares about this. Because if I'm the only person, I don't mean to drag anybody into Worcester for me if it's just me. But if other people find that the getting to know each other part of this and exchanging, pleasantries with one another, learning about one another, making the human interaction a part of what we do, so that it's not just on Zoom. I certainly do. And I just don't want our meetings to by default fall into this format all the time. I like it when people can choose which way they want to participate. And I'm an advocate for in-person participation myself, other than if somebody has a reason why that just doesn't work for them, and then that's fine.
Okay.
I agree.
Commissioner Shovlin, did you have something to say?
No. Although I will say, that was Jackie, I believe. I will say, Randy, I think the reason that we're doing it now is that we just didn't have a room, right? But I'm happy to meet him in person regularly. But Jackie, I think, was the one who spoke up.
No, I just said that I agreed with that statement, that we should have the choice of in-person or online. And that's the way it's always been, as we like to hear.
Just a reminder, we're virtual because we didn't have a room. And on top of that, the scheduled meeting was going to be on a holiday. So just a reminder, we don't normally do things on Teams.
Well, and we can talk about this offline, Pat and Kevin, but I would like us to move towards Zoom. That's a personal thing, and we can again talk about that offline. For the hybrid approach, that Teams, for whatever reason, just seems really complex sometimes. But I'm not going to get into that here. And then I think the other thing too is also just exploring more public spaces as well. My understanding is we're not constrained to City Hall, so that's something to consider in the future to ensure that this meeting is in a hybrid version and not just strictly online. So that's something that I'd like for us to explore offline as well. I see a member of the public with their hand up. Any other commissioner wanting to touch on something before I invite the public? Yes, Pat.
So the reason why, the reason why the policies were on the agenda was to see if we had commissioners who wanted to take on the review like we did the last time, which I believe formerly Vice Chair O'Callahan and then Commissioner Bellata took the last two policies and then made their recommendations presentation to the full board for us to submit to the WPD.
Thank you for clarifying that. do we have any commissioners that want to volunteer some time to do that in-depth research and then present it to the commission next month? Or next month's agenda is kind of packed, but Pat, did you raise your hand, Pat, or no? Okay.
No, I was taking it down.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't want to do that.
So let me say what I'm thinking. As I made clear, I want to move towards immigrants in the city and their situation and the authorities, both federal and state and local interaction with immigrants. That's what I want to do. But I do have to say, I do feel bad that if the city manager asks our committee, our commission, to work with the police department in its review of policies and practices when it wants someone in the community to bounce this off and to interact with it, if none of us volunteer to do this, we're not fulfilling that desire. So, and I prefer not to neglect that role that we've been assigned. So maybe what I would like to do, it might not be practical, which is to not prioritize that and put that off for a little while. But then the police department could easily say, hey, listen, we want to go forward. We don't want to wait 4 months for you people to look at this. We want to come out with a policy. So, you non-prioritizing what we are hoping you'll provide to us and what the city manager has asked us to do is far from ideal. On the other hand, I have no great inkling myself to do that work, to look at the specialized units or the K-9 guidelines, but I do feel bad if we don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably going to say if no one volunteers, I'll take it on. But if anyone would like to volunteer, please feel free to speak up. But what we'll do is, for the purpose of the meeting, like if no one wants to volunteer right away, we'll just put it under my bucket, and then if anyone wants to at some point, feel free to reach out to me directly, and we can go from there. Dr. Carey?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not prepared necessarily to do this just starting out, but I'm definitely happy to help someone to do this and to learn in that regard. So if you're going to take it on, please reach out. I'm happy to assist.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I see a member of the public, David.
Yes, this is in regards to the police practices, specialized units, K-9s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So just in regards to the specialized units, it would be really great if Vice, Gang Squad, etc. had additional accountability. There's been a significant amount of concerning reports from the community, and that doesn't seem to be one of the things we've discussed, as the police chief and everyone dismisses and deflects to all of the other ways they would like people to focus on the DOJ report. There are a notable number of specific issues with specific specialized units, and it doesn't seem like anything has really been done on that. So that's one. Two is regarding to K-9 guidelines. I know those have been updated, but I am still fighting to get public records and body camera footage from when the city of Worcester sicked a K-9 on a mentally ill person that they have previously arrested for robbing a bank across the street where he robbed a bank. This was a situation behind the Denholm building where they effectively had like 9 or 10 different armed people and looking down on him, and they sent someone down with a dog. And the importance of this is pretty much mostly that the Telegram released a statement before the Worcester Police Department, and then the Worcester Police Department's kind of contradicted what it seems like eyewitnesses had actually said. So I just kind of want to make sure that we are discouraging the Worcester Police Department from using dogs to attack people, especially mentally ill people, and also doing some level of additional audit on these specialized units that have historically had less oversight and more incentive to through bonuses or I don't want to call it bounty, but the kind of things that are collected during an arrest. There's a lack of oversight that has harmed this city, and it would be great if this commission could do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other commissioners? All right. next on our agenda is matters not anticipated at the time of posting. Was there a specific reason for posting that, Pat, putting that in the agenda, or was that Commissioner Schneblin when he was creating his agenda for this?
I think it's just a
It was
catch-all. You're right.
Yes.
It was a catch-all.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, we don't normally have even any time to do matters unanticipated, so, yeah, it's relatively new. It is on most board and commission agendas as a sort of a practice, but, yeah, we haven't really been putting that on. And that was on the rough draft, so we kept it when we met about the agenda prep.
Great. And I guess for me, one of the things that I would love to kind of know as well is the onboarding timeline for our two new commissioners. You know, what else do they still need to do? I know they both have been officially sworn in by the city clerk's office, but what other matters of onboarding are still needed, and kind of just how long that will take and stuff. That would be a really good update to present next month.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other things from any other commissioners? Okay. Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Our next
So we
meeting
have-
is Monday, June 23rd, just a heads up to everyone.
So we have a motion to adjourn. Before us, Chairperson Guillermo Creamer Jr.,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rob Bellata,
Aye.
Clerk Drew Schneblin,
Aye.
Member Randy Feldman,
No, I'm just joking.
Member Bernard Reese,
Aye.
Member Father Jonathan Slavinskis,
Stand, aye.
Member Dr. Carrie Witherell,
Aye.
Member Jacqueline Yang.
Aye.
So we are adjourned at 8:43 p.m.
Great. We'll see you on a month. Pat and